whatever it gives to security is what it gives back to you. Every day is for the thief, or one day is for the owner. That talks about that the thief is 99 times smarter than the owner. That's what it means. One must need to think like one.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, hope you are good. Okay, yeah. So, in order for us not to waste much of our time, I will go ahead and share my entire screen. Okay. So, kindly confirm if you can see my screen. So you can just drop like a reaction. Just drop a reaction. So I'll be sure that yeah, everyone can see my screen. All right, thank you so much for that, Ahmad, Joshua, Bright. Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, so we are going to deep dive into what we'll be doing today. And basically, if you can remember, if you can recall from our last class, we talked about web servers attack, web servers threats. Then I showed you a demo, or should I say, I showed you an illustration on how we can go about hacking web servers and the likes. So I would like to believe, I would love to believe that, we all understood what I was trying to explain yesterday, and then we all had a good time. So today I'll be moving on to what I have to discuss for today, which is web application attacks. So let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Yes, web application attack. So without wasting much time, we'll be starting from what we have here, which is we're trying to understand web application architecture and then vulnerability stack. So we might want to start with we understanding what we mean whenever we say web application. Like, what do we mean whenever we say a web application? So basically, web application is just like an interface between a user and the web server, right? Because web application, like we can see, is like a maybe a collection of web pages in such a way that it allows you to like dynamically carry out operations such as maybe you inputting data, you interacting with a page, such that whatever it is that you are doing on that particular page affects how the page is being shown to you. So when it comes to the concept of, we say, personalization, interactions, like you writing a comment, you making a post, and all of that, those are like some of the things that that we kind of link to a web application. They are dynamic in nature, which implies that you as a user, you interacting with that page, you can dynamically change the content of whatever it is that is being shown to you at any point in time. So as we have like web application, we need to ensure that because one of the most common assets, or should we say the most public assets of any organization, is still like their web application. So we want to ensure that since we have these and then they are internet facing, they are public facing, we want to ensure that they are being well protected from various forms of attack, such as SQL injection attack, cross-site scripting attack, session hijacking attacks, and the likes. All right, so web applications are basically softwares that runs on your web browser. They consist of web pages, and then they act as interface between you as a user and then the server. And then, like I've said before, they allow you to basically make requests. So you can maybe, fill a form, you can submit forms, you can try to retrieve data, you can try to check your account balance, you can try to maybe make an order and all of that. So those are like, some of the things that we attribute to a web application. And then as you will agree with me, right? They are being shown to you in a kind of GUI manner, that is graphical user interface manner, in such a way that you can just drag drop, maybe you can click on something, like I said before, fill forms and the likes. So, and then like I've also said before, web applications, they are being developed to be dynamic in nature, which implies that whatever it is that you're doing on maybe a web page or on the pages and the likes, it affects whatever it is that you'll be seeing. So opening your browser and then entering maybe URL to Google, you type or even your Gmail, you type www.gmail.com, and then maybe you sign into your Gmail and all of that. You're basically interacting with what? With a web application. Why? Because it is dynamic in nature. And then the content of whatever it is that you'll be seeing is being based on your own action with that particular thing or with that particular page. All right. So, and like I said before in our last class yesterday, when we talk about web servers, right, and then we talk about web applications or website, or let's even say like websites, even though they are different, right? Website and web application. Website is a bit static, and then when we say websites, they are a bit static, yes, and then they are based on the way that they are being built. They are to offer like 0 to low interaction, like they're expected to be static, right? But then they could be dynamic. But then if they are being dynamic, then they are very, very dynamic. So low level dynamic, which implies that they are just meant for you. They are meant to like serve as like maybe pages whereby you can just go to, and maybe you can just like see informations for content delivery and all of that. They are not like expected to be very, very dynamic, unlike web application. And then when you have like web servers, and then you have web applications, and then you have like websites, all these websites, web applications, they are being hosted on on web servers. And when we talk about web servers, we have many examples of them, like Microsoft IIS, you have Apache, you have HTTP server, and you have this H2O server, which is a server that is being is kind of new. It came into existence in February 2018. It's kind of new. And then you also have like your light speed web server. So all of these are just for you to like host your web applications and your websites. All right. So how does a web application works? So you as a user, you might just pick up your mobile device or your system, and then you try to maybe access a particular website or a particular web app. So you open your browser, you enter the URL or the URI of the website. So you enter that in your your browser, and then you click on enter. In reality, a lot of things happens in the background, because you as a user, all you just know is that you enter your URL, you click on enter, and then you see the content of the page. That's all you know. Like that's like what you can see, right? But then in the background, a lot of things actually happen. One is there's a kind of DNS resolution that kind of resolves that DNS to the right IP address, and then goes to that IP address, and then go and fetch the content of that particular page for you. So you as a user, if you're entering a URL, and then that URL is basically asking for a static page, that kind of situation now, like the flow is very, very easy. Why? Because the web server just goes to the static data store and then fetch the content of that page for you. A good example is you like requesting for an HTML page. There's no computation that is needed to be done. The web server just goes to the data store and retrieves that page for you. But then if you're like accessing like maybe a URL or URI, and then you're basically like accessing a site, and then that site basically ends with, let's say, like a .php, like that, that there are some kind of logic that are being involved in that kind of computation. So in that kind of situation now, you send the request via the internet, and obviously the web server might have like a firewall, to like serve as a kind of a perimeter defense, or like the first line of defense, right? And then through the firewall, then your request can then go to the web server. Now if you are requesting for a web application, you are requesting for like an application, not like a website now. Like I've said, websites are static, right? They're just for like content delivery. But we are talking about a web application. You are requesting for a web application. Then the implication of that is that whatever it is that you are requesting for, there has to be some computation that will be involved to like fill up some of the content that will be shown to you. And in that kind of situation now, your request is being sent from the web server to the web application server. And then from there, depending on whatever it is that you're requesting for example, now maybe you're trying to like you're trying to like maybe view your wallet and all of that. Then obviously, at the database, you have informations like users, your account balance, if you've made orders and all of that. So the web application server has to visit this database and then go and retrieve whatever it is that is needed to fill in the content of what will be shown to you. So basically, that is what happens if you are requesting for a web application. So the web server then forwards the request to the web application server, and then the web application server then forwards the request to the database, and then whatever information it is that you're requesting for, the computations will be done, and then the content will be filled back into like into like the page, and then sent back to you. So then you then tend to like see, you then tend to like see the content of whatever it is that you're trying to access. So basically, that's like what goes on in the background that you as a user you're not really familiar with. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I've talked about this. For example, if you're requesting for an HTML page, that's like a static page. So obviously, the web server just goes to the data store, retrieve that, and send it to you. And then when you're requesting for a PHP file or maybe a page that ends with an extension of maybe PHP or even ASP or even CFM, then all of that, like there are some logic that has to be done with that. So some computations has to be done. That is when your web server visits the application server and then do the computation and then fetch the entire result and then show all of that to you. So basically that is what you also have here. All right. Now the next thing is whenever you're talking about web application architecture, well, they are basically being broken down into three different layers. So you have the client layer, and then you have the logic layer, and then you also have the database layer. Okay. And then when we talk about the client layer, what you need to know here is that whenever you are talking about the client or the presentation layer, you are being concerned about the physical devices that the client is basically using to like access that particular web application. Like I've said before, you as a user, you can just you can just like bring out your phone, you enter the URL of the stuff that you're trying to visit, and then all of that. So all these physical devices that basically has their own operating system, and then you can run any web browsers or whatever it is that you want to like run on them and all of that. So all these devices are being regarded as the client or the presentation layer because they consist of all these physical devices that you as a client you are using to like access all those particular things. And pick up like I've said before, you pick up your devices, maybe your phone, your laptop, you enter the URL, and then you try to like retrieve whatever it is that you want to retrieve. So all those physical devices that you are using, all of that will fall under the client or the presentation layer. Then you also have the business logic layer. Now, this business logic layer is being broken down into two. You have the web server logic, and then you have the business logic itself. Yeah. So now for the web server logic, basically you are being concerned about like the different components that are being used to like should we say kind of secure the server itself, right? So we might be looking at things like firewall, maybe proxy servers, maybe HTTP request passer, or whatever it is that basically affects the web server logic itself. So that will fall under the web server logic layer. Then you also have the business logic itself. So when you're talking about business logic itself, basically what you're referring to is you're referring to the logic of the web application itself. So maybe the web application allows you to, maybe view cards, maybe make a request. All of that are business logic of the application itself. So all of that, they're like the functional logic of the web application itself. And then they could be implemented with maybe who knows, maybe .NET, Java, and then they might use technologies like that, and then maybe middlewares, and then all of that. But if you're talking about the business logic layer, what you're being concerned about is you're being concerned about the logic that the developers actually built into the web application itself. So that is what we are referring to the business logic layer. And the last one, which is like the third layer that you have here, is what is your database layer. And then when you're talking about your database layer, you're basically talking about every single thing that consists of your database, right? So maybe the cloud service, maybe AWS S3 buckets, all of that, even business to business layers, maybe at some point in time doing the stuff of your application, maybe you have your database being hosted on maybe a third-party servers and all of that. So all of that are like database layer. So for the database layer, you're being concerned about the database and every other thing that that you're basically using within that particular database. So it could be like cloud related, it could be something related to maybe cloud related services, business to business, or even like your normal database that like your MySQL, MongoDB, MS SQL, and all of that. So all of that consists of your database layer. Oh, let me be sure that I'm not even talking too fast. Are you guys with me? Hope I'm not too fast. Drop a reaction so I'll be sure that yeah, if you are with me, you kindly drop a reaction. Okay, emoji. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Yeah. So now, as we have like web applications, and like I've said, a web application is like one of the one of every organization most public available assets. It is most internet facing, which implies that In fact, even someone that does not really know about the existence of that particular company, even someone that does not really know about where the company is being located, might be able to, have an access to the company's website or web application, right? So now, based on the fact that it is one of the most public facing assets of any organization, then we want to talk about web applications threats and attacks. So we are looking at web application threats and attack. All right, so when it comes to OWASP Top 10, which is known as your Open Web Application Security Project, so when it comes to we talking about OWASP Top 10 application security risk, well, we have about 10 of them. That's why we call it Top 10. So you have the injection attack, you have the broken authentication, you have the sensitive data exposure, you have the XML entity, external entity, which is what we refer to as SXE. Then you have the broken access control, and then all of that. So I'll be starting by talking about each of them one after the other. So let's look at the injection attack in accordance to OWASP Top 10 2017. All right, so when you're talking about the injection attack, all you need to know about your injection attack is that it refers to all those type of flaw or vulnerability that occurs as a result of your own web application, executing every form of data that it receives. So it implies that during, while the developers were setting up the application, there were no form of, or should we say, there was no form of, let's say there was no form of input sanitization, there was no form of input, we call it sanitization, or maybe parameterization and all of that. So there are no forms of input sanitization at all, such that whatever input it is that you give to the application just read it like that. So it might read it like that and then interpret it in forms of maybe commands. It might read all the inputs like that and and just interpret them in forms of maybe query and all of that. So it implies that the application just consumes all the inputs. There's no form of sanitization, no form of parameterization and the like. So the implication of this is that if an attacker, the major implication of this is that if an attacker should discover that, oh, this particular application, there's no form of sanitization, no form of parameterization, nothing, then an attacker has to just look for ways such that he or she is able to make the application to execute query or even execute command. So whenever it comes to injection attack, things like SQL injection, command injection, LDAP injection are all regarded as injection attack, because they all arise as a result of the application failing to sanitize user inputs and then just executing whatever it is that it receives from the user. So I don't know if someone raising up his hand, but I'm seeing okay, it's fine. Okay, so that's what you have for your injection attack. Then you also have something that we refer to as who is that? Okay, Bright. Okay. Yeah, Bright. Yeah. If you have a question, you can unmute and talk.
Okay. Good afternoon, actually.
Yeah, good afternoon, Bright.
So please, I don't know if you can throw more light on this injection attack. My mind, I'm just trying to imagine. And like give an example, scenario of how this thing happens.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. So let me just switch to this. So can you see this particular Google Doc page that I have here?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So if you are talking about injection attack, I'll pick an example of let's say SQL injection as an example. I'll pick that as an example. So let's assume that you have like a web page, right? This web page has a login page. So on the login page, they're going to ask you for your username, and then they are going to ask you for, let's say, your password, right? So now, when we say a web application fails to sanitize user input, it implies that on a normal day, maybe the developers of the application just expect that whenever a user comes here and then it sees username, the user or the person will just enter his or her username, such as John, and then password, the person will enter what? His/her password. Fine. So now, SQL injection, as an example of this injection attack, implies that an attacker can just decide that instead of me entering John here, what happens if I enter John and then I start passing a whole lot of untrusted inputs here. So I might be like John, or maybe 1 equals 1, as you can see here. So in normal day, if I should ask you, I'll be like, is this still what you have here? Is it still a username? That will be the question. Whatever it is that you have here, is it still a username? So most likely this is not a username. This is username plus an extra. And this extra that you have here, they are what? Untrusted, we call them untrusted input. Does that make sense? And in this case, I'm just trying to, like enter a whole lot of I'll enter, it all depends on the attacker, right? So the attacker could choose to maybe enter username plus maybe a whole lot of untrusted inputs. Even some attacker will not even enter any username at all, and they will just start, inputting maybe queries and all of that. So now injection attack occurs if there is no form of sanitization on this, because by default, whenever you see a string like this, it means that that is an attempt to perform an SQL injection attack. So by default, maybe what the application will do is what? It's going to remove all these things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see if I have any other. Right, your hands is still raised. Okay, so if I've answered your question, if I just lower your hand. All right. Okay. So that's for your injection attack. It implies that what? The application is just, executing whatever it is that you pass to it. So you can pass a whole lot of, a whole lot of text, even commands or query. And then there is no form of what? Sanitization. There is no form of what? Sanitization on that particular input that you're entering into it. So you also have broken authentication. So if we are talking about broken authentication, this refers to every form of vulnerability that occurs as a result of, I don't know, some reason okay. So this refers to every form of vulnerability that occurs as a result of authentication and session management issue. So when we say authentication and session management issue, we are talking about issues or vulnerability or weaknesses. Who is that? So we are talking about issues or vulnerabilities or weaknesses that occurs as a result of you implementing your authentication mechanism correctly. So a good example of a broken authentication might be something like maybe compromised key, compromised session token, compromised key, compromised session tokens, and all of that, because all of this occurs as a result of the application itself having an issue within the authentication mechanism of that particular application. And remember, we are talking about the authentication mechanism of an application. We are basically just talking about how the application verify a user's identity. So when you talk about authentication, just like a way of you, trying to verify the identity of a particular person, right? So we've talked about broken authentication. It means that there is an issue in how they try to verify, the identity of any of their users. So now, that's one of the reasons why SQL injection can actually be used as a means to bypass authentication. Why? Because if if you're able to maybe you're able to perform an SQL injection attack against maybe an application or something, you might notice that you are actually able to access any user's account without providing their password. In fact, you might even be able to well, it all depends on the logic of the application, but most times you'll be able to access any user's account without providing their password. Why? Because you have been able to exploit one or two vulnerability within how the application verifies its user's identity. So we also have sensitive data exposure. So whenever you are talking about sensitive data exposure, we are just looking at weaknesses or vulnerabilities that occurs whenever a web application fails to protect sensitive data, such as what? PII. And when you talk about PII, you are talking about what? Personally identifiable information. And when you're talking about the personally identifiable information, you're basically looking at not this. You're basically looking at this. Yeah. So when you're talking about PII, personally identifiable information, you are basically looking at information that can be used to pinpoint a single person, like an individual. A good example is what? For any given person, any given individual, if you look at their email, combine that with their phone number, combine that with maybe their name, and then combine that with, let's say, their house address, it is enough to pinpoint who that particular person is. True or false? If you agree with that, let me just say thumbs up. If you agree with what I just said, let me say thumbs up. Not this. Yeah. So we talk about PII, personally identifiable information, for any individual. If you look at their email address, combine that with their phone number, combine that with their name, and then combine that with their house address, it is more than enough to pinpoint who they are, true or false. So if you agree with that, let me just say thumbs up. Nobody is dropping me a thumbs up today. Oh, okay, that's fine. All right, thank you, Bright. Okay, yeah, so that's like for that. So if we are talking about sensitive data exposure, we are just looking at we are looking at web applications that actually fail to protect sensitive data, like PII. So, and then the major issue with this thing is that the attacker could basically steal all those information and then try to use that information to commit fraud. They can even use the information to to impersonate that particular person. Then there's something we call XML external entity. XML external entity. And whenever you are talking about XML external entity, it is basically a vulnerability that occurs whenever an application that is processing an XML input, and this XML input contain a reference to an external entity, and then this particular application fails to like reference that particular entity in a secure way. So we are saying that the application is referencing the entity in an unsecure way. So now this is common whenever you are talking about we are talking about application that uses maybe XML parser and all of that. So one thing that you notice is what most times they might be making a reference to an external entity. But now if there is an issue on how they are referencing that external entity, then we can start talking about what? XML external entity vulnerability. And one funny thing about this type of vulnerability is that it can be used in conducting a denial of service attack, and this is common in some WordPress websites. Yeah, if you are looking at their XML rpc.php, you notice that if it is configured properly, such that when you visit that particular endpoint, you can see the post request and all of that, then you can make how should I call it now? Then you can manipulate that particular endpoint in conducting a denial of service attack, and a whole lot of attack that can be that can be done via that particular way. I think someone wants to talk. Oh, okay. So that's one of the things that you notice about XML external entity. So many of the application are poorly configured XML processors, and then they are making references to like maybe external entity or maybe external document and all of that. Then you might be able to like manipulate that into conducting some forms of attack, like denial of service attack that I've talked about before, which is common for WordPress websites. You can also like use it for a whole lot of interesting things, like maybe to like read files, like reading files, yes, reading internal files, yes, and then maybe executing even for scanning itself. Yeah, it could be used for like scanning. Exactly, it could be used for like scanning. In this case, it's regarded as internal port scanning. So those are some of the things that you might notice in some of these poorly configured WordPress websites. All right. Then you also have broken access control. Okay. And then whenever you're talking about broken access control, you are looking at vulnerability that happens after you've talked about authentication. So you are looking at vulnerabilities that occurs in such a way that maybe an authenticated user is able to do something that they should not be able to do. Now remember, just like I've said yesterday, you do not talk about authorization without talking about authentication. Why? Because authentication comes authentication. Authentication comes before what? Authorization. And when you talk about authentication, just like a way to like do what? To verify the identity, a way of verifying the identity of a person, right? That's authentication. So now you are looking at authorization. When you say authorization, you are trying to see if a user that is authenticated has the permission to perform whatever it is that they are trying to perform. That's what authorization. And then now we are not talking about broken access control. It implies that a user that is logged in, let's say you have two users, you have Bob and then you have what? You have Alex. So now Bob is logged in, right? Bob can see his account details, he can see his profile, he can perform transactions, he can do all of that. Now you are looking at Alex. Alex can also see his own account details, he can perform transactions. Alex can decide to edit his profile, can do all of that. Now, broken access control occurs if there exists a vulnerability in your application such that the user Bob can modify, either modify or can see. When I say see, I mean view. So this user Bob can modify and then view information regarding user Alex. So this will be a classic example of what? Of broken access control vulnerability. Because by default, you are not expecting user Bob to be able to do what? To be able to like edit user Alex profile. Both of them are authenticated. Both of them have an account on the, they have an account on the platform and the likes. So any vulnerability that occurs after authentication, such that a user is able to perform an action that they should not be able to like perform on a normal day. For example, a user Bob is able to do what? To view and modify user Ali's profile. Then that becomes what? Maybe a vulnerability. User Bob is able to let's say view user Ali's account balance. User Bob is able to view user Ali's maybe profile settings, profile page, history, orders, all of that. Then all those type of vulnerability are what we refer to as what? Broken access control, because it is a vulnerability that occurs after we've talked about what? Authentication. So this is a vulnerability that deals with what? Authorization. So let me be sure that nobody is raising up his hand. Okay. So I think we understood what I've said so far. All right. So you also have something we call security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration. And whenever we are talking about security misconfiguration, we are looking at vulnerabilities that occur as a result of misconfiguration on the systems that you are using, maybe on the application that you are using, maybe on the portals that you are using, or the system that you are using itself, right? So, and a good example of that is you having a publicly accessible AWS S3 bucket. Having an AWS S3 bucket is not like, that's not like the issue, that's not the misconfiguration. But the misconfiguration is what? If anybody that is able to like locate that S3 bucket can just copy that URL, put it on his profile, and then he or she can start to see all the files or whatever it is that you have in that particular bucket. That particular situation becomes an issue of a classic example of what? Security misconfiguration. And a good example also is you using default credentials. So maybe you have a particular server, or a particular maybe routers and all of that, and then you are using their default credentials like default username, default password, all of that. So that kind of vulnerability will be falling under what? Security misconfiguration. All right. Then you also have something we call there's something we call cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting, popularly known as XSS, which is A7. Yeah. Cross-site scripting, XSS, which is a type of vulnerability that occurs whenever an application includes untrusted data in a web page without proper validation or escaping. So a good example of that is going to be maybe the application has a feature for you to maybe edit your profile, right? So in your edit profile and feature, you can change your username, you can change your emails, you can do all of that, and then all of those interesting stuff. And then instead of you when it's asking you for you to like change your name or your username, instead of you just going there and maybe entering a normal username like maybe Bob or Alice. So what happens whenever you now go there and then you are typing scripts, and they are closing this, you are typing this, you are saying script, and they are saying maybe alert and they are saying XSS. The implication of this is that if any user should try to maybe they come across your profile, right, and then they click on that your name, basically instead of them to like see your name, they will just be seeing an alert that will be showing what XSS. So click on OK to like cancel or stuff like that. So basically, if we are talking about XSS, it is a kind of vulnerability that occurs whereby an application is including untrusted data as a part of a particular web page, which is basically what you have here. So it implies that if anybody should come across my profile and then click on my name, maybe the application, you know, display people's people that are on the application. Maybe you can search for people and all of that. So maybe the application allows you to like look for friends, add and all of that. So instead of you clicking on my name and then seeing my name, you click on my name and then you'll be seeing this particular thing. Or even applications that maybe you know, they allow you to like write comments, allow you to like make a post, and you just go there instead of you know, writing a normal post and then you're writing something like this. It implies that any single user that tries to check all the comments that are there, when they click on the feature to like check all the comments that are present on that particular post or something, then they will be seeing an alert box that will be telling them what XSS. So that's like a classic example of what cross-site scripting. Okay. Then you also have this, which is what we call insecure deserialization. Yeah. So, well, I don't want to talk about the concept of serializers and all of that, right? But then if you are talking about insecure deserialization, it's like, okay, before you talk about insecure deserialization, there's something we call serialization, and then the opposite of that is what we call deserialization. So when you say serialization, it means you're converting maybe a data structure or a Python object, you're converting all of that into something like maybe JSONs and all of that. And when we say deserialization, which is like the opposite of serialization, it means you're converting all these maybe JSON data and all of that, you're converting them into Python objects and maybe data structure. So now when we say secure deserialization, it means that that process of you converting all these you know, all these JSON data and all of that into Python objects or data structure, there's an issue with it such that if an attacker should come in and maybe enter some, you know, malicious input and all of that, then the entire thing is being what? Is being deserialized, such that the attacker can then choose to maybe, you know, maybe read internal files, you know, maybe like conduct RC, that's a remote code execution, or maybe like just tamper with stuff or delete stuff or do a whole lot of interesting things. But insecure deserialization occurs in that particular process whereby by the time you start converting you know, all these JSON data into Python object or data structure, there is an issue with that particular process, and then you're not able to like, you're not able to like capture that particular, you know, that particular issue, such that attackers can just come in and then try to do a whole lot of interesting, and then I used to call them interesting, that's why, okay, but then they're like you know, damaging stuff here. They're like actually like damaging stuff, yes. Okay. Then you also have something we call using components with known vulnerability. So when we say you are using a component with known vulnerability, it implies that maybe the libraries that you are using, this framework that you are using, or libraries you are using, framework you are using, or maybe there's a third-party software or whatever it is that you are using, that particular thing has an issue within it. So in that kind of situation now, it implies that you know, the component that you are using in building your own maybe application has an issue. The jQuery version might have an issue of maybe SQL injection, or maybe the jQuery version has an issue of maybe cross-site scripting or whatever it is. So these are like what we refer to as what? Using components with known vulnerability. Because one of the things that you notice is that if you are using that component and that component is being known to have a known vulnerability, it implies that an attacker can find out that, oh, these people or this particular software is using this particular library, and they will just make research, and then we'll see a list of you know, the attacker is going to see a list of vulnerabilities that are affecting that particular library, and you, that who knows, you may or may not even like know about the existence of that particular thing, or you fail to like upgrade your library to, you know, to a more secure one and all of that. The implication of that is what an attacker can just come across all of this and then try to exploit that particular application based on the fact that some of the libraries that the application is using has a known vulnerability. So that is what that's like what we refer to as using components with known vulnerabilities. Let me be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Are you guys still with me? Are you guys still with me? If you are with me, drop a reaction. Just react. If you are with me, react, react, react. Okay, it's fine. All right. So this will be the last thing that we'll talk about before we go for our first break. All right, and that has to do with insufficient logging and monitoring. So when you talk about insufficient logging and monitoring, it means that during the process of you setting up your application and the likes, you do not implement logging. And you not implementing logging implies that if maybe any attacker or an attacker should decide to maybe hack your application, you have no evidence to basically know that, oh, at this particular time, an attacker with this particular IP address is trying to gain an access to my software or to my system. Insufficient logging and monitoring basically implies that what you fail to implement a proper logging technique, i.e., there is no log file to show that, oh, at this particular time, these are the set of users that are trying to trying to access your application. This particular IP is trying to do this particular IP is trying to do that. You have no evidence, you have no log to show all of that. So that will fall under insufficient logging and then monitoring. All right, so when we are back, we'll continue with the class. But then I would like to ask if in case you have any questions so far. All right, in case there is no question, then we can go for a break. While I will we can go for a break now while I will be handing over to Mr. Samuel. So after our break, we'll continue with the class. Thank you. So we are going to continue with web application attack tools. So I'll be showing you when we get to the practical session of this. Once I'm done with my presentation, when we get to the practical session, I'll be showing you some of these. All right. So now, when it comes to web application attack tools, one thing that you need to know is that we have a whole lot of them, right? But then, one of the most common tool that is being known that you can basically use for web application attack is what we refer to as Bob suit. We call it Bob suit. All right, so Bob suit, well, it can come in different, shall we say, versions. You have the Bob suit professional, you have the Bob suit community editions, and then you have all of that. But basically, this tool can support an entire web application testing process from initial mapping of your target to the analysis and the exploitation phase. So you can basically use Bob Suite as a tool for your your entire web application testing process. So one thing about Bob Suite, in which I'll show you when we get there. But then another tool is what we refer to as OWASP ZAP. And ZAP basically means Z attack proxy. So OWASP ZAP. So now OWASP ZAP kind of allows you to perform an automated security assessment on a web application. So it has a scanner, yes, that you can basically use to automatically scan your application, right, for vulnerabilities and the likes. So you can also use that particular tool to find security vulnerabilities manually, but then you can also automate the process. So another tool which is common, in which I also talked about in our last class, which is also a tool that you can use for web server attack. That is one of the tools that we used to call Metasploit. Metasploit. So now Metasploit is like a framework, and I'll be showing you today, you can use Metasploit for let's say your an entire web application testing engagement. Yeah. So for what I'll be showing you today is going to be us trying to attack, in quotes, access, or trying to test a WordPress website. So we have an option of using Bob Suite, we have an option of using Metasploit, but I'm thinking of using Metasploit because that will make the entire process faster. And then you also have some other tools like W3AF, like Nikto, Sniper, and WSSIP. They're just they're various tools and different tools that you can basically use for your web application attack. Okay, so yeah. So now let's talk extensively on Bob Suite. Yeah. So now when it comes to Bob Suite, like we said, is like a tool that you can basically use for your entire web application testing, assessment, or your entire web application testing process. So you can basically use it to like map out an application, a web application. So if you want to like map out an entire web application, you can use a tool like what? Bob Suite. Yeah, so now Bob Suite has some inbuilt, should we call it features? Yeah, and one of it is what we call intercepting proxy. So now for your intercepting proxy, that is like the point whereby you kind of try to capture a request. So in normal day, whenever you open your, let's assume you open your web browser like Firefox, maybe Chrome, or whatever it is that you're using as a web browser, and then you type in a URL, right? By the time you type in a URL or you are trying to like access a website and then you click on enter, by default, like we said and like I said in our last class, a request is being sent to the server. The server processes the request and then sends a response back to you. Now, you as a user, if I should click on enter, there might be a situation whereby I don't want my request to be sent to the server directly. Why? Maybe I want to be able to like see the request, I want to be able to like manipulate the request, I want to be able to like maybe edit the request, or just like interact with the request, edit one or two. Then the next thing is what you can just configure something known as an intercepting proxy. So in this case, you can just use like this Bob Suite intercepting proxy to basically catch that request before the request is being sent to the server. So you open your browser, you enter your URL, you press enter. Instead of the request being sent to the server directly, you can just capture the request and then you can choose to do what? To do whatever it is that you want to do with it. So now the intercepting proxy is basically what you have in this particular diagram that you have here. So this is like the proxy tab and this is the intercept tab, and then as you can see the different requests. Oh, it's sending a get request to some particular endpoint using a query parameter ID with a value of 1, the host name. You can see the user agent, which is what you have here. The user agent, and then user agent basically talks about like the the web browser that you're using, right? Okay, so that's like one of the features that you have for it. Then you also have the application where Spider. So Spider just allows you to like to like crawl the entire content and functionality of a particular web app. So there might be situations whereby you just want to like know like the structure or the content or the functionality of that particular web app. Then you can just like choose to spider that particular web application. So to spider that for you. Then you also have web application scanner. Now this is a web application scanner. It's like a feature that you have for Bob Suite, right? Which is used for automating and detecting numerous types of vulnerability. But then it is being intelligent enough. Obviously, it does not mean that it will be able to like catch all of the vulnerabilities and all of that. But then you can use that to like at least catch some of the vulnerabilities that it can catch for you. Then you also have something that we call the intruder tool, but we commonly call it the intruder tab. So when you say intruder, should in case you want to like perform maybe a brute force attack on a particular login page, then the intruder attack is going to be, or the intruder tool or the intruder tab will be one of the tab that you'll be using the most. Why? Because you can basically send the request, as you can see from here, from your proxy tool. You can basically send the request from this intercept tab or your proxy tool to your intruder, and then from the intruder tab you can then configure your Bob Suite to start a brute forcing attack or a brute forcing attempt. Then you also have the repeater tab or the repeater tool. So now this your repeater tab or your repeater tool basically allows you to manually edit stuff. So I can capture a request from my proxy in the intercept tab and then send it to my repeater tab, and then when the request gets to the repeater tab, I can manually edit the request and send it, and then I'll look at the response. Oh, if I'm not satisfied with it, I can still see the request in my in my repeater tab. I can manipulate it, I can just do it manually, and then send it. The one thing that you notice about all of this is that intruder is for like automated. Example, you want to brute force, maybe you want to like brute force the password of a particular account and you have the word list. You can just like use your intruder, your intruder tab. But repeater is used if you want to like manually interact with it. I want to be editing it one after the other. So I will edit it at first, I will send it. I will edit it again, I will send it. I will edit it again, I will send it. Okay, so that's for your repeater tab or your repeater tool. And then you also have something we call the sequencer. So the sequencer basically is used to like test for randomness of session token. So if you want to like see maybe a particular web app, maybe it has a weak way of a weak way of generating its session token, you can just like send a request to the sequential tab or the sequential tool, and then you just automate it, and you can just configure it to like send maybe 1,000 requests, maybe 10,000 requests, login requests obviously, so that you can generate a whole lot of tokens, right? And then you can just, from your sequential tab or from your sequential tool, you can just try to see if there's any form of pattern in how that session token is being generated. So it's going to tell you if you can see any kind of pattern that you can, maybe you can exploit and all of that. So that's what you have for your sequencer tool. So yeah, like I've said, this is how this is like how the interface of Bob Suit Community Edition looks like. And then you also have OWASP Zap, like I've said before. You can use this one to like perform like an automated form of testing on a particular web application, right? So you can just go there, you enter the URL of your application, you click on start attack, and then it will basically, try to see if it can find any kind of vulnerability within that web application. If it can see anyone, then it will like highlight all of that for you. So if it's able to see any critical vulnerability, maybe any medium vulnerability, high vulnerability, low, all of that, it will highlight all of that for you. And then you can also like from your Zap, you can also try to like see maybe the structure of a particular web application. So whatever page, maybe there's an endpoint, they have to like JavaScript file, maybe there's a particular folder, all of that, like the structure of the web application. You can also like get all of that from OWASP Z attack proxy, which is commonly called OWASP Zap, which is your Open Web Application Security Project Z attack proxy. Okay, yeah, so basically this is it. If you're able to like see any form of vulnerability, once you go to the alert, it's going to tell you, oh, maybe this is a vulnerability, this is a vulnerability. It will highlight all of that for you. And some other tools, like I've said, Metasploit. So I'll be using Metasploit for today's demo. Yeah. Okay, now, if I want to, wait, before I move on, let me see. Does anyone has any question for me? Okay, yeah, Bright is raising up his hand. All right, Bright, you're raising up your hand. So if you have any question, you can unmute and talk.
Okay, Mr. Tony, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just a quick question though. This using all these applications, just are they limited to just web applications? Can they also be applied for mobile applications?
All right, I'll answer your question. So let me start with some of the things that I have here. All right, so for Bob Suit, right? There are ways in which you can configure Bob Suit to work with mobile application, but then you have to like do some kind of configurations and all of that. So you can actually use Bob Suit with mobile application, even Bob Suit with an API, like your Postman and all of that. You can do some configurations with it such that Bob Suit can work with mobile app, like mobile application or APIs. But then when it comes to Zap, yeah, when it comes to Zap, who is that? Okay, but then when it comes to Zap, this only works for web application, because you have to like enter the URL of your web application, then it will crawl it, it will do some testing on it, and then if it's able to like see maybe one or two issues, it will highlight that for you. If it's able to like see any issue, it will highlight all of that for you. Now you can use Metasploit for mobile app and all of that, but then like most of them that you have here, or everything that I'm talking about here, is only in the context of what? Web application attack. So there are like different tools that you can use for what? Web application. But then there are some of them that will actually like work for mobile app, such as Bob Suit. So has that answered your question, Mr. Bright?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So yeah, so let's talk about some of the countermeasures that we have for web application attack. So for SQL injection attack, some of the things that you can do to basically like maybe should we say, can I make this a little bit bigger? Yeah. So some of the things that you might want to do to like limit your application being susceptible to an SQL injection attack. One of it is to ensure that you limit the length of user input. That is one. Another thing that you might try to do is to ensure that you do what? instead of you doing debug equals to true, instead of you allowing your application to be giving out debug error message and all of that, ensure that you use a custom error message. For example, now maybe yeah, you turn off your debug, the normal debug equals to true, you turn that one, you turn it off, and then you ensure that you use a custom error message. So the error message that will be returned, even whenever users are trying to like maybe perform an SQL injection attack against your application, will be something custom, something generic, not something that is specific. That is true. Another thing is you can decide to monitor your traffic, and then you implement something we call WAF, which is your web application firewall, right? So now some of these the web application firewall, depending on how you configure it, might be able to detect like SQL injection attempts. So whenever a user is trying to like exploit your application via an SQL injection attack, then the Cloudflare, what's it called? That Cloudflare banner or Cloudflare error message will just show. Might just be like, oh, we notice maybe a malicious or whatever traffic coming from your IP. Yeah, that's how you like see the error message. You'll be like, oh, it's noticed like maybe a malicious traffic coming from this particular IP, and this malicious traffic points to an SQL injection attempt. But whatever it is that the attacker is trying to do will not succeed. Why? Because there's like a web application firewall that is looking at that request and then is blocking every form of malicious traffic. So you have that. Now for command injection, well, for command injection, basically it means that you're trying to like you can execute command line, like command line related command on that particular application. For example, now you can make the application to like execute command related operations, such as maybe listing out files in a folder, maybe navigating, like moving out of the folder, moving into a folder, reading files in folders and all of that. So now for command injection, some of the things that can be done to limit the effect of that is to perform something we call input validation. So to every input that is being sent, or to every input that is being consumed by the web application, they are being validated to ensure that the inputs are not malicious in nature. Another thing is what? Escape dangerous character. So they might be implementing something like maybe whitelisting, blacklisting. So whatever it is that they know that, oh, the presence of this can cause, maybe the presence of this particular character or the presence of this particular input can basically cause a command injection vulnerability. You can just blacklist all of that, which implies that if you are sending a request that consists of all those characters, they will be escaped, they will be skipped over, they will not be interpreted at all. And another thing that could be done is the usage of language specific libraries in order to like avoid problem related to shell command, because command injection basically works with what? Shell command. So if the server happens to be a Windows server, then the command that will be used to manipulate the web application will be what? Windows related command. And if the server happens to be like a Unix server or a Linux server, then the command that will be used to manipulate the web application will be what? Linux related command. Then you also have something we call LDAP injection attack. So we are looking at some of the countermeasures, looking at some of the things that could be done to to kind of should we say reduce the effect, or maybe limit the effect, or even like eradicate the presence of LDAP injection attack. Then one of it is to ensure that we perform type pattern and domain value validation on all input data. All of these things, as you can see here, all of them still happen as a result of input data. So one thing that they will ensure that they do is what? They validate. There is a check on all those input data. Another thing is to ensure that they make use of LDAP filter. So they will make their LDAP filter to be as specific as possible. So there will be some commands that you can run. There will be some commands that once it sees it, it knows that, oh, I must not run this thing. This thing is malicious. So to just just like filter it or remove it. And another one that you have here is what? You validate and you restrict the amount of data that is being returned to the user. Very, very important. Okay, so yeah. So now, web server attack countermeasures. So for broken authentication and session management, related vulnerability, you can ensure that you use secure socket layer SSL or for authenticated part of your application. So you want to ensure that any part of your application that has to do with maybe authentication and all of that, ensure that they are being done via SSL. They are not using HTTP. They are using what? HTTPS. Okay. Another thing is for you to you verify whether all the users' identity and credentials, they are being stored in hash form. There's a reason for that, because they are talking about maybe someone is able to maybe after exploiting broken authentication, maybe or even session management related vulnerability, they're able to get an access to maybe your database and all of that. The moment all of that are encrypted, or if they are being hashed, then you are kind of limiting the effect of what's going to happen. Unlike what happened in 2009 against a gaming a gaming website that they were hacked, and then the entire passwords, their database was in clear text. That was one that was one of the things that led to rockq.txt, like I explained in the last class, which was yesterday, right? Yeah. So now what you're trying to ensure is what you want to verify that all users' identities and credentials, they are being stored in hash form, i.e. they are not being stored in what? Clear text. And another thing is you want to ensure that session related data, they are not being sent as a part of a get request or a post request. So now for your sensitive data exposure, what are some of the things that you could do to try to try and then should we say limit the effects of sensitive data exposure, like things that you can put in place. One of it is to ensure that you do not create or use weak cryptographic algorithm. So algorithms like MD5, SHA-1s, and all of that, they are being considered to be weak. They are like hashing algorithm, and they are weak. So now, if you are generating encryption keys, ensure that they are being generated offline, and then you store them in a secure place. So you store them securely. Another thing that you could try to do is to ensure that any encrypted data that is being stored on disk, they are being stored in such a way that it is not easy to decrypt them. Why? Because if it is easy for you as a person to decrypt them, then it also means that it is going to be easy for the attacker to do what? To decrypt it. If you are using maybe a key, you want to ensure that the key satisfies, it's a very, very long key. And it's not something that is, it has to be something that is very, very random. Not like something that they can easily tie back to you, that they can just guess. And they'll be like, oh, let's try this as the key. And then they will try that as the key, and then they'll be able to decrypt your data or decrypt your stuff. You want to ensure that whatever it is that you are using, whatever key it is that you are using, is as long as possible, it satisfies. It's not like something that they can easily tie back to you as an organization and a whole lot of stuff like that. Because you want to ensure that even if you get compromised, it is difficult for an attacker to decrypt all of that, and then you store the keys offline and you store them securely. So some other things that I might be looking at is for XML external entity. You want to ensure that you avoid processing XML inputs that contain reference to external entity by weakly configured XML parser. So like I've said before, this XML external entity is like a kind of vulnerability that occurs within applications that basically use like XML parser, and they make reference to what? External entity. So if your application does something like that, then you want to ensure that what? The XML parser is being configured correctly. I.e., it's not like someone will just come and then go and change maybe one thing within your request, and then they are basically able to read files from maybe your internal system, or they're able to conduct a DNS attack, or they're even able to use that to scan your internal network, like your internal network. So you don't want a condition like that. You want to ensure that what? They are being configured properly. And then another thing is what? You want to ensure that you pass your document correctly. So if it's meant to be a document, you return a document, you pass them properly. So now for your broken access control, before I move on, let me just, okay, Bright, question. All right. Yeah, Bright, you can.
Okay, Mr. Toby, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm kind of interpreting the process of my questions.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's fine, it's fine.
Okay. So my question is this under this broken authentication and section. Sorry, can you go back to your sharing?
Can you see it now?
The here to come up on my end. What I'm just seeing the interface for the team.
Oh.
Meeting. So my question is, this never submit section data as part of a get and post request.
Okay.
Can you throw more light in this? I want to understand what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. So one thing that you're going to notice is that. Well, can you see my page now? Like, can you see my screen now? Web application attack.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I
So
can see.
basically, what they're trying to tell you is that if you're looking at session data, what are the things that you're looking at? Remember, if you're talking about session, it's just like a way of keeping, what's it called now? A way of keeping track of a user's active session. You're talking about session. So user logs in, and then you assign like a session token to that particular person, just like keep track of this particular session. And then if you are, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but then if you are aware, then you know that session tokens are like being generated on the server side, true or false. So they are being generated on the server side. Okay. So if you are familiar with those two things that I've said, then one thing that you notice is that maybe you are trying to log in. So what you notice is that maybe you try to log in, you enter your maybe your username, your password. Most likely that will be submitted via a post request, true or false. Then you send the request. Okay, yeah. Then you send the request, and then by one thing that you notice is that the moment you are logged in, so maybe some cookies might be assigned to you, sessions might be assigned to you, all of them might be assigned to you. But one thing that you notice is that even if your what's it called now, your subsequent requests, what you notice is that they will be using your cookie to like do what? To like keep track of who you are. Now, one of the reasons why you want to ensure that you're not submitting like session data via a get request is because remember, if you're submitting something via a get request, most likely it will be present in the URL. True or false?
Yes, true.
Exactly. So now, if it is being present in the URL, do you know the implication of that?
It's visible to all end users.
That is one. And two, it implies that maybe maybe for okay, maybe like someone just has like maybe how should I say this now? Okay, yeah. So maybe someone you're on a network and then and then maybe you're sending requests and all of that. By default, they might be able to like, see all the URL they are going to. True or false? Might be able to, this particular user is going to this particular URL, this particular user is going to this particular URL. So what happens if instead of us seeing a URL, then we are seeing a URL that basically contains session token or session data. The implication of that is what? That person that can basically be seeing all of that result can just copy that entire thing and then impersonate a user. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that is one of the reasons why we want to ensure that you are not just like submitting session data as a part of a get request or a post request. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So which of the request type will you advise that it be passed with?
Well, it all depends on you, right? Okay, yeah. So now one thing that you notice is that when it comes to maybe web application, you have different type of request method. You have get, you have post, you have let's say patch, you have options.
Delete and put.
What do you say?
Delete and put.
Exactly. So one thing that you want to ensure is that get should not be a part of it, right? Okay, yeah. So we want to ensure that a get request is not like a part of it, and then a post request is not a part of it. So you might just want to like explore some of the other request method that you have, and then find whatever it is that is more or most suitable for your own application. Does that make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. But most times, maybe some of the things that you might have seen is you might see that even some application, yeah, they might be submitting it via maybe like post request and all of that. But then they will never submit it via a get request.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Sure. Any other question? Any other question? So one thing that you notice, okay, let me just okay. So one thing that you notice, let me just say this now. One thing that you notice is that even if your session latest stuff who knows, it might be a part of maybe some of the requests that will be sent for your post request, but then it will not be a part of what you are going to see in the URL. It will be a part of the body. So you have done if you are into like web development, or you have done, or you've tried maybe intercepting your request before, looking at your request, plugging in, and then just checking through your request header, your response header, and all of that. Then one thing that you notice is that all of that will be a part of your body and not like the headers. Okay, so if that makes sense, and then if I can say that there's no question, so maybe I can just continue. Okay. Yeah. So for web application attack countermeasures, we also have security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration. And like I've said before, like things like you using you using default usernames, using default password, and all of that, they all fall under what? Security misconfiguration vulnerability. So some of the things that you can do to like to like limit or even like eradicate the presence of a security misconfiguration vulnerability is to ensure that you configure all your security mechanisms and disable all unused services. Like I used to say, if there's any service that is on and and then you know that you're not using them and it is on, then you do what? You disable them. Why? Because if you should fail to disable them, it only means that you are increasing your attack surface. You are increasing your attack surface, and that particular thing you're not using it. So it becomes okay. So it becomes a bit easier for like hackers to find you and then hack you. So another thing is that you want to ensure that you set up rules, you implement the right permissions, set up accounts, disable all default accounts, and basically you change all default password. Then some other things that could be done are, you can scan for latest vulnerability, you apply latest patches and all of that. And then you also want to ensure that any request that is being made via non-SSL, you want to ensure that you automatically redirect that request to your SSL page. So a good example is you open your browser, you type HTTP, then you type that column, then you say // So this is what I'm saying. You want to ensure that, for example, now a user comes to, tries to like access your application, right? And then that user types something like this. And then let's say example, okay, or let's just say maybe our domain name.com. Then you want to ensure that your application automatically redirect the user from HTTP to what? HTTPS. And then the name of our account, domain name.com. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen something like this before, but then it has been seen a whole lot of times, especially if you have your assets configured properly. If you should go there and then you try to like access that site via HTTP, what you notice is that what? The application or the server itself automatically redirects you to what? HTTPS. And the major reason is because on HTTP, whatever it is that you are doing there is not secure. So they can see everything that you are doing in clear test. If you should go there, you enter your username, you enter your password, every single thing that you are doing there can be seen in clear text. Okay, so I don't think there's any question. Okay, everybody's raising up his hand. That's fine, that's cool. Okay, so now for XSS attack, one of the things that we can try to do is we want to ensure that we do what? We validate all headers, cookies, and query string. So we want to ensure that we have something we call input validation. So whenever we see a string and we know that this string can basically be used for what? For maybe to like conduct maybe an SSS attack or something, they want to ensure that we do what? We remove it. So basically, you set up your application and then the logic and everything, you set it up in such a way that whenever it sees all those type of thing, it kind of does what? It kind of either remove them, either, maybe remove them and process the rest, or just like validate, just like ensure that whatever input it is that users are providing to it, they are like the right input, they are like the expected input, they are not malicious input. So another thing is you might want to use some testing tool to like just to like test your application so that you can detect XSS vulnerability if it is present, and then you can fix that. Another thing is you can also like you can use firewalls, like I've said. The same way you can configure your firewall to like protect you against SQL injection attack is the same way you can also like configure it like to like prevent you against XSS related attack. So anytime you go there and then you try to like perform or carry out any form of and then try to like carry out any form of SSS attack on that particular application, you are going to you just see like an alert, like a firewall alert, maybe Cloudflare or something. And another thing is you can also ensure that you convert all non-alphanumeric character to HTML character before you display them to users. Very, very important. very, very important. So instead of you like just picking it and displaying it to them directly, you convert them into what? HTML character before you display it to users. So let me check. Okay, all right. So still on the countermeasures. Okay, I'll just talk about this. Right. Okay, I'll just talk about this. So now for countermeasures against insecure deserialization, want to ensure that you can validate. Like I said, one of the things that you can wait. Something just happened now. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I really do not know, but then someone removed me from this particular meeting. I was removed from the meeting. Okay, I'm coming, please. Let me confirm something. Your video, I know you can't access my camera. Please, can everybody confirm that they can hear me?
Yes, Mr. Toby, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. That was really unexpected. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen again. So the moment you can see my screen, just drop me a reaction. The moment you can see my screen. Okay, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you. Okay. Okay, yeah, so let me just continue with what I was saying before. So for your insecure deserialization, one of the things that you can ensure that you do is what you validate untrusted inputs before you serialize them. So that's like one of the things that you can try to do, and then you can also ensure that in some situations it might requires maybe the developers of that application to look for ways to like maybe re-architect, maybe like change one or two logic behind the application and all of that. But then the idea of what you have here is what is that just to ensure that only data that are being trusted are being serialized. Okay, so now using components with known vulnerability, then one of the things you can try to do is what you can obviously like watch out for updates, patches regarding whatever software it is that you're using, right? So you can do that. You can also like ensure that whenever you are using like maybe a library on your application, always ensure that you are using the latest version of that particular library. Yeah. And the another thing that you can also try to do is, you can try to like ensure that you monitor like some databases like national vulnerability database for vulnerabilities that could be affecting whatever component or libraries it is that you are using on your particular software. So if that makes sense. So, and then for the last thing that you have here, which is insecure logging and monitoring, some of the things that you can try to do is you can ensure and try to ensure that you implement logging on your assets. So you have like an application, maybe you have like 5 applications. Ensure that on each of those applications there are logs. And when I say there are logs, I mean you have logging implemented such that if any user or any entity, any person should try to like access your website today, you have enough information to like even know who the user is. For example, now maybe their IP address, their browser related, maybe their web browser version and all of that. So you have like login in place to even like keep track of whatever it is that is coming to you. And then you can also like ensure that if the logs are being implemented, then you are also monitoring it, right? Because it is one thing for you to implement it, the another thing for you to be monitoring it. So you have it implemented, then you're also like monitoring it, so that whenever you notice a traffic that looks suspicious, then you know what to do. Okay, so I'm being okay, so I've talked about some of this before. All right, so now for web application security testing tools, remember some of the tools that might also like be looking at is NStalker web application security scanner. Yeah, just like you have WhatsApp, right, for like maybe conducting an attack and all of that. This NStalker web application security scanner can be used to like check for vulnerabilities on your web application. The same thing as what Acunetics. So these are some of the applications I've used before, like some of the tools I've used before. Browser exploitation framework, Metasploit, Powersploit, Watcher. So these are like some of the tools that you can basically use to, like, perform a security test on your web application. So for okay, let me see how many minutes do I have more. Okay, I think I still have a bit of. Okay, now for Instacart web application security scanner, it can basically check for some of the common vulnerability that like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and some of some other well-known attack, right? Or some other well-known vulnerabilities in your web application. So it can just like perform some check to like see if there exists some of these vulnerabilities, and if it exists, as usual, it will just highlight it for you. So like this is Instacart, like the interface, how it looks like. So this is like an example of you seeing, for example, now you can see some of the results that you have for this particular application. It is telling you that this application might be vulnerable to what? Clickjacking attack. So it is telling you that maybe, oh, it looks like the header of the request, or maybe the header of the response of that particular, that particular site after sending a request. Then maybe it noticed that some things are missing. They can just tell you that, oh, this thing is missing, this thing is missing. And sometimes if some of these security headers are missing, it could expose your application to some vulnerability, like what? Clickjacking, or even CSRF, which is cross-site request forgery. So it's just like scan your entire application, and then if it notices anything that looks that looks like a vulnerability, it will highlight that for you. But you as a person, you have to like think beyond the scanner. So once you see a result like this, you have to like confirm it by yourself. So if it's telling you that, oh, this application is vulnerable to clickjacking, then what you want to do as a person is what? Try to see if you can achieve clickjacking on that particular application. So now it is telling you that this application is vulnerable to what? To clickjacking. Then try to see if you can actually like carry out a clickjacking attempt or a clickjacking attack on that particular application. And like I've said, these are also like some of the like the tools, right? Like Acunetics, browser exploitation framework, Metasploit that will be showing you in the practical demo today, Powersploit, and then Watcher. All right, so I'm thinking of moving to the practical after our break. But then before the break, I would like to ask, are there any questions? If you have no question, then I think we can go for our second break. So after that break, by the time we resume, I will be starting the practical for I'll be starting the practical for web application attack. So if I have a lot of time, I'll show you how to conduct that attack using Metasploit, because that is faster. And then you can also like decide to like go with Bob suits if there's time. I'll show that also. But if there's no time, then I'll only show for Metasploit. And then you see us trying to like attack a WordPress website. If that makes sense. All right. Yeah. So we can go for our second break, which is only going to be for 10 minutes. Yeah. All right, guys. So welcome back to our class. Okay. Yeah. So before I continue with this session, there was someone that asked a question about security tools like vulnerable to attack or something. Okay, so let me just answer your question before I actually continue. All right, so the thing is, one thing that you need to know is that all these so-called security tools, they are also softwares. Metasploit is a software. Bobsuit is a software. They are also like, they are softwares, so they consist of codes, and they are being written with programming languages and all of that. So yes, the same way and the exact way that web applications are vulnerable to attack, or web applications have their own like maybe vulnerabilities and all of that. It is the same way that all these tools can also have their own vulnerability and their own attack on their own weaknesses and all of that. So the exact same way that you have web application and their attacks, you have mobile application and their own attacks. All of that are softwares. They are written with codes, with a programming language. They consist of codes and all of that. It's the exact same way that security tools could also be vulnerable to attack. Or it is the exact same way that it is the exact same way that all these security tools can also have their own weaknesses, can also have their own vulnerabilities. So I can't really remember the person that asked that question, but I would like to know, has that answered your question? Has my statement answered your question? Is the person even here? You can just drop, okay, let me see. Okay, yeah. Ọlọ́run Túyì Ayọ̀mídé, has that answered your question? So you can just drop a reaction so I can continue with what I have to do today, or maybe drop a message. Ọlọ́run Túyì Ayọ̀mídé, yeah. So, okay, yeah, okay, I've seen your reaction. All right, okay. So I'll just move on to what I have to like show you. All right, so now for the practical session today, what we are going to be doing is we are going to try and see, not like try and see, we're actually going to try to like hack a website here, which is going to be what I'll be showing you now. So I have the website set up on this particular page, wp-login.php, exactly. So we are going to attempt to hack a WordPress website here. All right, so you can see it. You might have seen something like this before. So those of you that you are familiar with WordPress, CMS, and then all of that, right? Okay. So now we are going to try and attempt to hack this particular site. Okay. Now before I continue, I really hope that nobody's asking me any question here. Okay, nobody. Okay. So I'm going to try and do something at first. So now when it comes to you testing a login page, no matter what the page is, i.e., whether it is a WordPress website or not, or whatever it is, you can always try to see if there exists some default, some default account, right? So when I say default account, I mean you can try to see if there is any way in which you can get valid account on that particular page, in which I'm going to show you now. But then before I come here, so now when we want to start the testing, I hope you guys can see this my Google Doc screen. My Google Doc screen. That's why I'm sharing my entire screen, because I might be moving around. Okay. So now I want to try out some default, we call them default credential pairs. Default credential or credentials pair. And what are they? So you might be trying a username like, let's say, root. Usernames like maybe admin, guests, manager, etc. Default username, right? And then for the password, you can also try out some default passwords such as root. You can also have admin. You can also have something like maybe QWERTY, and even maybe something like maybe pass, or maybe pass 123, or password 123, or whatever it is that you want to call it. So I can just try out some default credential pair, i.e. some default usernames versus passwords. Does that make sense? Okay, so if that makes sense to you, then I can also try something similar here for this particular WordPress page. So on my left hand side, what I have here, I'll try to see if I can log in with the username of, let's say, root, and a password of, let's say, admin. And then on my right hand side, I'll try to see if I can also log in with the username of, let's say, admin, and a password of, let's say, admin. As you can see that, right? So now we are going to click on login here, and then I'll also click on login here. Boom. And then by the time you click on login, well, as you can see, it was not successful, right? Because we're not able to like login. And then, but one thing that you notice, which is one of the qualities that a good pen tester or even ethical hacker must have, is one, you have to like know how to pay attention to details. Both of them fail. I mean, I could not log in with both of the credentials. It failed. But one thing that you notice is what? I have a different error message. So look at the one I have on my left hand side. It is telling me that the username root is not registered on this site. If I am unsure of the username, try email address instead. So it is telling me that the username root is not registered on the site. Fine, no problem, that's fine. Now, looking at what I have on my right-hand side, it is telling me that the password you enter for the username admin is incorrect. So based on what I can see here now, what do you think this means? What can you imply from these two different error message or error messages? So I need someone to like answer that question. From those two error messages that I showed you earlier, what can you imply? So I just need someone, just one person to answer that question. You can raise up your hand. I would like it if you can raise up your hand. I would actually like it if you can raise up your hand. Is anybody raising up his hand? Yeah, Ahmad Sultan. Yeah, thank you. You can unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, yeah, so the first, can you go back to the
Yeah, I'll go back there.
page of,
Yeah, I'll go back there. Yeah. So can you see it now?
okay, yes, so
Okay.
the one at the left,
Okay.
the one at the left is that like the username root is not registered on this site, which is just that the username which you entered is not registered on that website at all.
Okay.
And also, since the username is not registered, then you can't even map it with any password. So that one is just like nothing.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
for the one at the right hand side, it says that the password you entered for the username admin is incorrect. That means we have a username which is admin on that website, but the password you just entered for it is not correct.
Exactly. That is right. That is very, very right and valid. Thank you so much, Sultan. Right. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So now what we can see from this is that on my left hand side, it is a no-go area. I can't pursue that. Why? Because the username root does not exist on this particular application. So obviously, like Sultan has said, I cannot map that to a password. So my left hand side is a no-go area. But then if you look at my right hand side, it is telling me and it is showing me that the password I entered for that particular username admin is incorrect, which implies that there exists a user on this particular WordPress application with a name or a username of admin, which implies that I just have to find that particular user's password. So yeah, so it means that I just have to find the password for the account with a username of what? Admin. So the implication of that, like I've said, is that what? My left hand side is a no-go area. So I'll cancel this, I'll cancel that, and then I will expand this. Why? Because now I know that I can pursue this. I just have to do what? Brute force this particular password for this particular account. So now, if that makes sense to you, then the next thing is what? Now, when it comes to me trying to, brute force the password for this particular account, I actually, what you have here, this particular error message that you have here, that I can, I'm able to like differentiate between a user that exists on an application and then a user that does not exist on an application. In reality, it is a vulnerability. It is a weakness. Why? Because now that I have the username, I can just go ahead and go and look for the password. Now I have the username, I'll just go ahead and look for the password. So actually, this is a vulnerability, and we call it what? User account enumeration or user enumeration or user account enumeration or just username enumeration. But now that I know that this username exists, now let's try and we are going to like try to like find the password. I'll be doing that. We're going to be doing that by performing brute forcing also. So we're going to see if you can actually brute force this particular page and get the password, which is what I'm going to be doing now. So now to do that, what I'll be doing is I'll be using, let's use Bob Suit. To do that, I'll be using Bob Suit as an intercepting proxy, so that if I should come here and click on login, instead of my request to be sent to the server directly, I do not want my request to be sent to the server directly. I want to be able to intercept it, capture that my request, manipulate it, and then automate it for my brute force attack concept or my brute forcing attack concept. So to do that, like I said, I'll be using Bob Suit. So I'll run this command. I'll type Bob Suit and I'll press enter, and then you can see Bob Suit is getting loaded up. It is getting loaded up. I'll just click on I really hope you can see this. Hope nobody is raising up his hand. Okay, nobody is raising up his hand. Okay, that's fine. All right. So now I'll try to I'll just click on next. This is Bob Suit Community Edition. I'll just click on next, then I'll click on start Bob. So this will try to load my Bob Suit page for me. Meanwhile, I'll come back to this my website. Go back. I'll come back here. Now, before I can actually start my brute force attempt, like I said, I need to like start Bob Suit, set up a proxy, and all of that. So now to set up the proxy, we have to come here. I'll click on. Remember, I'm using a Microsoft Firefox, web browser, right? So I'll click on these three hamburger menu that you can see on this my upper right hand corner. These three menu that you can see there. I'll click on it. Then I'll click on settings. As you can see here, I'll click on settings. Then I'll scroll down to the last thing that you have here. Then you can see something that says network settings. So I'll click on these settings that you have here. I'll just click on this exactly. So if you should click on that, you should have something similar to what I have here, and then you should have this thing, no proxy selected by default. But then because I want to set up a proxy so that I can capture my request and then manipulate it before sending it to the server, then I have to click on manual proxy configuration. Manual proxy configuration, as you can see here. So I'll click on that and I'll click on what? I'll click on OK. Now the next thing is I have to come here to this my Bob Suit, and then I have to navigate. If you can look at the upper part of my Bob Suit, you can see Bob, you can see project, you can see intruder, you can see repeater, you can see view, and you can see help. So you can see all of that, right? But then where I am going to is the proxy tab, because I'm trying to set up a proxy. So now a level downward, you can see dashboard, you can see target, you can see proxy. But then I want to set up a proxy, so it implies that I have to go to proxy. So I'll click on proxy, as you can see here. So now, so now I've already done that. Now the next thing is I can basically, at this point I can start intercepting my request and all of that. By default, by the time you load your by the time you load your Bob Suit, it might be like this, and then you see this blue something here. This blue something here that's telling you that your intercept is on. This blue something that's telling you that your intercept is on. You can turn it off, but if you turn it off, you'll not be able to like capture any request. But then I want to be able to intercept request and capture request, so I have to turn it on. So I'll click on it again, and then the blue button comes back on. Then the next thing is I'll just go to our website. Okay, I'll come here, which is this, and then I'll just enter something random here. I can enter anything, does not matter. I'll just enter anything here. So I'll enter admin also here. Then I'll click on what? I'll click on login. So one thing that you notice is that this thing will be loading. It will just be loading. It will not go through. It is only loading. It won't get to my server. Why? Because I have decided to capture the request. So if I should go back to my Bob Suit, as you can see here, I'll just click on my Bob Suit. Then you basically see the request here. So most times, whenever you're trying to like log into an application, you are basically sending a post request, as you can see here. I really hope you can see my screen. I really hope you can see this. Okay, but most times, whenever you're trying to like log into, is anybody raising up his hand? I cannot hear you, sir. Hey. You cannot hear me. Please, can you confirm that you can hear me and then you can see my screen? Oh.
We can hear you and we can see your screen.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Israel, you're raising up your hand. If you have a question, you can unmute and ask before I move on.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to ask, if, for example, now you want to intercept from someone else's, like someone is trying to log in, like act like a man in the middle kind of. Okay. Does it work the same way?
Yeah, you can also set up a proxy. Yeah, exactly. You can also like set up a proxy that way too. But then by default, you might not want to use a tool like Bob Suit. You might want to use a tool like EHE. Yeah, like EHE. Yeah, you can use that one for that. But then it works the same way. Yes. So does that answer your question, Mr. Israel? Does that answer your question?
Yes. I also you said that I don't know. I think my screen is lagging, or maybe just my own end here. Like you would have said something, you finish, would have passed that page before it not starts showing.
Alright, that maybe it's your network. Can
can
other people confirm that it's not like that from their end? So I'll be sure that there's nothing wrong from my own end.
It's fine from my end. Yes. It's good.
Okay, it's okay. So Israel, maybe it has to be your network. All right, so I'll just go back. Let's go back to the practical. All right. So now the next thing is, as you can see here, I have been able to like capture this particular request. And like I've said, if you should go back to our site, it will still be doing loading. It will not go through. Why? Because I have intercepted the request here and I have not forwarded the request. So I am not to forward the request. I am actually to send the request into something that I've mentioned before, which is called the intruder. So now to perform the brute force attack, I'll be using the intruder like a feature on Bob suit to carry out my brute forcing attack against that particular page. So now what I have to do is I will come here, then I'll look at these three things that look like an hamburger menu or whatever it is that you want to call it. These three things that you have here, and I'll just click on it. So by the time you click on it, you're going to see different options. It will tell you scan, send to intruder, send to repeater, and all of that. Then I'll just click on send to intruder. And by the time I click on that, if you look at my upper corner, this intruder menu, you will notice that it was like pink before, which is to tell you that it has received a new request. So what I just have to do is I have to like navigate away from my proxy tab to my intruder tab. So I'll just click on this intruder, as you can see here. So I'll just click on intruder, and then you can basically see the same request that we saw before. All right, so now to carry out the brute forcing attack, now I know the username, right? We have been able to discover that the username admin is valid. So I only want to brute force this password. So I want to select this particular field for my brute force attempt. So all I have to do is I'll just go back to my Bob suit. Then we are going to look at these requests. This is like the body of the request that is being sent. The body of the request that is being sent. The body of the request that is being sent. So you can see something that says log is equals to admin. That log is equals to admin. It's basically the username that we provided, which is what admin. But then you can also see something that says pwd is equals to admin. That pwd is to tell you that that is the password field. And as usual, I also entered admin in that particular field. But remember that what I want to brute force for, what I'm trying to like check for, I already know that the admin is valid. What I'm trying to check for is the password. So I'll just double click on the value that has been assigned to the parameter pwd. I will click on it twice, and by the time you click on it twice, it changes to something that you have like that. And then I'll just click on add. I will just click on add. Now notice that something happened. The color changes. That is one. And then on your right hand side, you can see a payload window here. On this particular side, you can see a payload window here. So now what I have to do is I just have to like locate the word list that I want to use to brute force for this particular password. All I have to do is what? I have to like locate that word list that I want to use to brute force for the password of that particular user admin. So all I have to do is I'll just come here. On my right hand side, where you have the payload, I'll click on load. And there you can see some of the word lists that I have before, which is like the word list that I used for you yesterday during the practical session yesterday. You can see the password.txt, and then you can see the usernames.txt. So I'll just click on the password.txt. I'll just click on it, and then it will be loaded like this into this thing. Now the last thing that I have to do before we start the brute forcing attack is to just click on start attack. By the time you click on start attack, it's going to show you a different window entirely. I'll just click on OK, and as you can see, it has started the brute forcing attempt. So if you should look down here where my mouse is, you can see that it has about 173 payload or 173 requests to send, and at the moment it has done 26 out of 173. So on a normal day, what you want to like do is you just have to like wait for it. So you let it, just let it like do its own brute forcing attempt. You just wait for it and let it like finish brute forcing. So let me confirm that this thing is still running. Yeah, it's still running. That's nice. Okay. So now as you can see, we started the brute forcing attack, and then it is running like that. Okay. So we just wait for it to finish. So now another person might decide that instead of using Bob suits, he wants to use Metasploit for this exact same thing, i.e. he wants to use Metasploit to brute force this particular page. That will also work. Okay, at some point I will show you Metasploit, but for now let's just wait for this. So at this point in time, it has done 54 out of 173. If you look at my lower left-hand side, lower corner of my left-hand side, yeah, then you can see 58, 59 out of 173. So it is sending the request, and as it is sending the request, you can see it here. You can see the length. You can see the payload, the request number. You can see the payload. You can see the status of the request, 200, which is to tell you that it is okay. Then you can see the response time, and then you can see the length of the response that it receives after sending the request. So let me see if someone is asking a question. Yeah, nobody is asking any question. That's fine. Nobody raising up his own hand. Oh, let me see. I think there's something here. I'm having network issue. Oh, sorry. Emmanuel. Okay, yeah, Emmanuel is raising up his hand. Yeah. So you can unmute and talk. Ask your question, Emmanuel. Yeah. Good evening. Yeah. Or good afternoon.
I wanted to ask, can we first length of the password? First, we try to log many. Can we refine our word list automatically without having to delete each password that
Okay.
is below it?
I understand what you're saying. So now the thing is, you can actually you can refine your word list. You can create your own word list. You can refine it. Yes. Now when it comes to you trying to like either create your own word list or you trying to like refine your own word list, you might want to ensure that whatever it is, whatever concept it is that you are using to like generate your word list is something that is valid for your target. When I say something that is valid for your target, I mean something that is maybe like related to your target one way or the other. For example, now an application says that, oh, maybe to log into the application, you need or maybe to like register on the application, you must have registered. Your password has to be nothing. Who is that? Your password has to be of length not less than 7, maybe 7 characters in length, or maybe 8 characters in length. So now, if you want to like refine your own word list, or you want to like generate your own word list, it implies that the word list that you'll be creating should have none of the password or whatever it is that you have inside should have something less than 7 characters. Why? Because before you can even create an account on that particular target, you must have registered with a password that has at least 7 characters in length, if that's like the web application policy. Does that answer your question? Yeah, you're welcome. I think someone was also raising up his hand before. Was it Mohammed or? Okay, so if there's no other question for me, let me look at this. Okay, if there's no other question for me, then we'll just go back to the practical. All right, and then as you can see, it is still sending the request, sending the request. But one thing that we have to look for now, is that as we are here, right, we want to see if it has been able to like get the the right password to that particular account. And how do you do that? Pretty easy. First thing is, you can try to sort each of these things based on the status code. That is one. Or you can try sorting each of these outputs based on the length. So now, in some situations, status code is going to give you the answer that you are looking for, and in some other situation, it will be the content length that will give you the answer that you are looking for. So now, for now, let me just talk about let's talk about length, so you understand better why I said we should sort based on the length. If you come here, one thing that you notice is that for most applications, if you should enter a credential that is wrong, i.e., maybe the username is right and the password is wrong, or maybe the password is right. Okay, I can't even say password is right, but let's say maybe the username is right and the password is wrong, or maybe both of them are wrong. What you notice is that you're going to have like an error message, something similar to this. There'll be an error message, maybe invalid credentials, maybe depending on how they build the application, but most times it might be something like invalid credentials. So most times you still tend to see the same page, but only tell you that what invalid credentials. But one thing that you notice is that if both of them are right, you will not be seeing this page. It's going to show you an entirely different page. So now, based on the fact that it's going to show you an entirely different page, it is similar to we saying that whatever page it is that is going to show you is going to be of different content. And if it is of different content, it will most likely be of different length. Imagine If you're able to log in, maybe what you're going to see is you're going to like see the dashboard and all of that. If you are seeing the dashboard, it implies that what? You are seeing something that is of, you are seeing a page that is of different length to what you are seeing now. And as you know, if the password is wrong, you keep having the same error message. Most times it should just tell you invalid credential, invalid credential, and then you tend to have the same page. Okay, so now if you understand that, then it means that we can decide to sort based on either the status code or the content length. But in our own case, let's just try sorting based on the content length. So to do that, I'll just put my mouse on this length, like this length that you have on top. I'll just put my mouse on it. Then I'll click on it once. So when I click on it once, what do you notice? You notice that it kind of rearrange this entire thing for me, such that the one with the least length is being shown to me. And if you look at this, you notice that the length of this particular payload or this particular request is 1271, while others are what? 5,000 plus. Every other thing that you have here is 5,000 plus. Every single thing that you have here is what? 5,000 plus, except from one that is what? 1,271. So that is to let you know that there is something special about this particular request. And one funny thing is, when you also look at the status code, you notice that it is the only one that has a different status code. The status code for this particular request is what? 302, while others are what? 200 or 2. So that is to let you know that there is something special about this particular request. And in our own case, it implies that what? This is the password. How do I know that? Okay, let's look at a request that we know that it is wrong. That is not the password, this particular one. By the time you look at the response, you can see request, right? And you can see the response. By the time you look at the response, you notice that it is returning an HTML page for you as a response. And then your set cookie header here is just one. You only have one set cookie header on position line number 7, if you can see that. And then when you try scrolling down, there is an like a page, like an HTML page, like a login page being returned to you. You can click on render if you do not believe that, and then it's going to show you the exact page for the error. But let's look at the one that has a different status code. If you click on the one that has a different status code, one thing that you notice is that you have two different, you actually have about 3 different set cookie header. You have one on position 7, you have one on position 10, and then you have one on position 12. And this particular this particular set cookie header just assign a cookie to this particular user after logging in successfully. So that is to let you know that for this particular application, the password to the admin account is what? QWERTY at 123. As you can see here, QWERTY at 123. And if you check the request, look at the password field, the PWD field. What was put inside is what? QWERTY at 123. You can see that QWERTY at 123. So if you can see that, then the next thing is what? We can then decide and see if you can log into this particular application. Now we have been able to get the password to that particular account. Then let's try to log into the application. Now to do that, the first thing I have to do is what? I have to go ahead and turn off my proxy, because now I don't want to intercept. I want to forward it to the server. I'm not trying to intercept it now. I just want to forward it to the server. So I've gone there, I've turned off my what? I've turned off the proxy. Then I can just come here and just turn this one to off. Go to proxy and then I'll turn it off, as you can see, like that. Then I'll come here, I'll try to reload this page. So I'll reload the page. That will be the first thing. I'll reload the page. Then I'll type the password that we got earlier, which is what? QWERTY at 123. So let's confirm that we've typed the right thing. QWERTY at 123. So now if you should click on login, what do you notice? You are able to access this particular WordPress page. And basically, we only exploited two different vulnerabilities. One is what? User account enumeration or username enumeration, and the other one is what? Lack of rate limiting. There was no form of rate limiting, there was no form of account lockout mechanism, and basically we combine those two different vulnerabilities together. We get an access to the WordPress site. Does that make sense? Okay, someone has a question. I think someone is using officer hand. Oh, there are two, Abby. Okay, two. Let me start with, I think I saw Ahmad first. Sorry, let me start with Ahmad. Then after that, Ahmad, you can unmute and talk.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir, for the demo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. You said that you exploited the vulnerability of that there was no account lockout measures during the brute force.
Exactly, yes.
But the requests were not sent to the server. They were sent to the proxy server. Like it's not getting to
Nope.
that server. So how are they
Okay,
meant to log in?
okay. Now let me show you this. So now at first, when I started my proxy, it was not a proxy server. I only started like a proxy to intercept the request. Now, the moment I sent that request to the intruder and then I clicked on start attack, then the requests were being sent from my Bob suit to the server itself. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
Does it make sense? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Now, Israel, yeah, you can unmute yourself and talk now.
All right, sir. So thank you also for this beautiful presentation right now. Demonstration.
Yeah,
I have three
yeah.
questions.
Okay.
So number one is that what about in situations where the website itself would like give the limit for trials?
Yeah.
For example, and they might say, okay, you can only try this like 3 times or 4 times. Right? So and afterwards it's going to be blocked. Does it affect Bob suit? Does it like affect it in his testing or his brute force attack?
Okay.
That's number one. And number two, okay, if this one is, okay, let me just ask the other question.
I can barely hear you, Israel. I don't know. I can't hear you again, Israel. Israel, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Okay, so what's your second question? I don't know.
Let's answer the first one.
Okay, yeah. So now for the first one, what you need to know is that when it comes to implementing maybe account lockout, it all depends on how it is being implemented, right? So it might be like they might have like a policy in place or maybe a feature in place, and they'll be like, oh, maybe if you should try maybe 3 invalid combinations of maybe usernames and password. Maybe what they will do is lock the account itself. So yeah, if that is like the situation, and then they lock the account itself after about maybe 3 wrong trials or 5 wrong trials, it implies that after that there is nothing you as an attacker can do. Does that make sense? Because once they lock it, it means that they are not processing anything on that particular account, so the account has been locked. So now Bob Suit cannot it's not like Bob Suit is going to like help you to like to like bypass that lockout or something. Bob Suit cannot help you to bypass that lockout, because the lockout, all of that are being included in the logic of the application itself, and the application is being hosted on the web server, right? So you're only like interacting with it. But like I've said before, this is only possible because there is no form of account lockout, and then there is a user name enumeration vulnerability on this particular application. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Does it make sense? Okay.
So the second question now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So the second question is that, okay, when you're now discussing like this, even though about signal,
okay,
the let's say they have cybersecurity leaking on the other hand there, should they also be getting like alert of the
obviously all of that? No, okay. I love that question. The thing is, by the time you ask, okay, if you trusted like a website, right, they are like logs that are being generated, and most times the logs might contain information such as, I think I've said this before, might contain information such as your IP address, the web browser that you are using, and maybe the time that you try to like access that particular thing. But in reality, as I am doing all of this, there is a recording, there is a log that is monitoring all of that. It is being saved somewhere. By default, if they have like their login and all of that set up, then there is evidence that I was there. There is evidence that this particular IP address tried this particular thing at this particular time. Does that make sense? Was it Israel? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Or I don't know if there's any other question. Or if there's no other question, then how many minutes do I have more? Okay, I think I still have like some few minutes more. Okay. So now at this point, a whole lot of things can be done, right? Because there's even one thing that I need to show you, which is going to like make this demo kind of interesting. Yeah. So now the thing about WordPress is that anytime you're able to like gain an access to like the admin account itself, then you can actually look for ways in gaining an access to the server where the WordPress website is being hosted. I'm not sure if you get that, so let me come again. Anytime you're able to like, gain an access to an admin page or an admin page, yeah, of a particular WordPress website, then you can actually gain an access to the server where this particular WordPress is being hosted. So that is the next thing that I will be showing you now. So now we have been able to gain an access to the WordPress website. Then the next thing is what? Can I actually gain an access to the server where this particular WordPress application is being hosted? And the answer to that is what? The answer to that is yes. So let me see. People are trying to come in. I don't know. And the answer to that is what? Is yes. So that's going to be the next thing that I will be showing you. Oh, did someone drop a message? Okay. Yeah. So now that will be the next thing that I'll be showing you now, which is what? Now that we have been able to like get an access to the admin page of the WordPress website, let's see if we can get an access to the web server via the WordPress website is being hosted. Yeah, we can. And then to do that, I'll be using a tool known as Metasploit. Metasploit. I talked about Metasploit yesterday. I also talked about it today. So I'll be using that to show you how that can be done. So now to use Metasploit, I have to type a command known as msf console. That is like the command that you use to like launch your Metasploit. But I'm even looking at this before. Can I finish this thing? Okay, let me see. Okay. So you can use msf console for that. So we just type msf console and we do what? We can press enter. So now this will make yeah, this will basically load Metasploit for me. And as you can see, it is telling me that I can access the documentation of that page and all of that. Okay, now that's okay and that's fine. But in our own case now, what we want to do is what? We have been able to like access a WordPress website. We have been able to access the admin page of the WordPress website. How do we gain an access to the server? It's a question. And now we want to find the answer to that. So to do that, I'll be using a module present on Metasploit that is known as wp_admin_shell_upload. So to find it, I'll just type search. As you can see, I guess you can see my screen. Let me bring this a little bit up. So I'll just type search wp_admin_shell_upload. Then I'll press enter. Okay, let me try to maximize this. Yeah. So now the next thing is what? I've already searched for it and then I can see, I can see the module, which is basically what I have here. And then the module is what? It's excellent. It was discovered in 2015. That was when they actually discovered that this particular thing can be done. And it is WordPress admin shell upload. As you can see that right. Now the next thing is what? I have to use, so I'll be typing use, then I will go ahead and copy this. So I want to use this particular module, so I'll go ahead and copy it. So I'll just copy that and then I'll paste it here. So I want to use exploit Unix web application wp_admin_shell_upload and I'll press enter. And as you can see, it is telling me that no payload is being configured, and then it is defaulting to using PHP Metapita reverse TCP, which is just like a way for me to like get a shell on the server, i.e., just a way for me to like be able to like get a shell on the server where the WordPress website is being hosted, and that is fine. That will work. So the next thing is what? I will be typing show options. And when I type show options, I can see a whole lot of things that are being shown there. So it is telling me that, oh, password, proxies, arrows, and all of that. But in my own case, I need to set some value. So one, I need to set the password value, which is basically the password that we're able to like use to get an access to the WordPress site itself or the WordPress page itself. The password that I use to like get an access to this. So I need to set that. So I need to set for the password. If I want to use a proxy, like maybe I have some proxies configured to like so that it will not be sending, it won't be as if I'm the one sending the request. So maybe I have like some proxy servers or some proxy chains and all of that. So if I have that, I can configure it. But I'm not using anything like proxy server here. So I'll be setting my password. I'll be setting the out host. And when we say out host, I mean either the domain of my target or the IP address of my target. But in my own case, I'll be using the IP address of my target. Then I also need to set the out port. For the out port, that would be for that would be in my own case. If you come here and you look at this, so let me just copy this entire thing here and put it here and show you what I'm about to show you. The implication of what you have here is what? Is that HTTP is what? Is the protocol, true or false? And then it means that 10.10.1.22 is like the IP address of my domain or my target. So this is like the IP address of my target. And basically, I'm kind of breaking this thing down so I can understand better. And then this 8080 that you have here means the port where my website is being hosted, or the port where this WordPress website is being hosted. In this case, it is being hosted on port 8080. And then the /CH that you have here, or the CH that you have here, basically implies that that is like the that's like the folder where the WordPress website is being put into. So the implication of this is that on the server that has the IP address of 10.10.1.22, there is a folder that is named as what? CH. And inside that folder, inside that particular folder, that is where the WordPress website is being put into. Does that make sense? So that is like the folder that the WordPress website is being put into. All right, so I'm looking at this because I think the time will soon be over. So maybe we should go for the third break or the last break. So Mr. Samuel, I think we should go for the last break because if I'm to start this other thing, I won't be able to finish it before that link expires. So yeah, let's go for our 10-minute break now, and then we'll zoom back for the final version of this demo, where we're actually going to try to gain an access to the server via Metasploit, like I've shown you here. Yeah, so let's go for our 10-minute break now. We'll be resuming by 5:02. Yes. So now, like I've said, I said when it comes to like WordPress application, right, the moment you have been able to like gain an access to the admin page itself, then you can actually then gain an access to the server where the site is being hosted itself, which is going to be what I'm about to show you now. And then to do that, I said we are going to be using Metasploit, right? And then to run Metasploit, I said we'll be typing the command msf console. So now, after doing that, then the next thing is the module. I have to use a module known as wp admin shell upload. But then to use this particular module, which is wp admin shell upload, I need to configure some settings, just as if whenever you want to like run your tool, maybe you're running a vulnerability scanner, or you want to like do some tools, in some situation you might have to like configure some parameters. It is the same thing as what I have here too. I also need to like configure some parameters. So I'll be doing that here. Okay. So now to configure my parameters, I need to set my password to be equal to the password that I found earlier on. And if you can remember, the password that we found earlier on was what? If you can remember from our intruder attack, it was QWERTY at 123. QWERTY at 123. So I have to set that for my password. So I will be typing, I will say set password to be equals to QWERTY at 123. And that was the password that we found earlier for that particular admin user. So it has told me that it has been set. Okay, fine. Then the next thing is I also need to set the out host. And like I was showing you here before, before we left, I said by the time you pick a URL, you can basically break it down into some parts. So now HTTP for your protocol 10.10.1.22, which is your IP address, is the same thing as what we refer to as your remote host. It is the same thing as what we refer to as your remote host. Now, this 8080 that you have outside or after this particular 10.10.122 is what you call your port. But in our own case, it is what we call our remote port, output. And then this CEH that we said it is a folder before, it is what we call our target URI. So there's going to be a point in which it is going to ask us for some of this information. So by the time it starts, by the time it starts asking us for all those information, I will just be providing it, if that makes sense. So I'll just be providing all those information. So yeah, we come here. We have set our password to be equal to what? QWERTY at 123. We have done that. Then we need to set the R host in this case. And the R host in our case, like I've said, is going to be what? For what I've shown you here, is going to be 10.10.122. So I'll go back. I will say set R host to be equal to 10.10.122. As you can see that, then I'll do what? I'll press enter. Then the next thing is what? I also have to set some other things like output. If you look at what you have here now, the default value that you have here is what? Is 80. But in our own case, our own output is not 80. It is what? 8080. So the implication of that is what? I have to come here and then set our output to be equal to what? 8080. Then I'll press enter. So all those values have been set as I am, as I'm setting them like that. Now the next thing is it was asking if you want to use like SSL, but we don't need that, so we are not using it. Now you can see this. It says target URI, which is like the base part to our WordPress application. In our own case, we have to do that also. So I will say set target URI to be equals to what? So if I should go back to the breaking down of what I did here, our target URI, which is being gotten from the entire, the entire part of our URL is what? CEH. So I have to do that here also. So I will say set target URI to be equals to what? CEH. I'll press enter. So now there's another thing that is also, it's also like necessary for us to set, which is what? The username that we want, the username that we want our module or our exploits to use and log in. We've already set our password to be equal to QWERTY at 123. Then we also need to set the username. And as you can recall from username enumeration, we know that the username that we want to use is what? Is admin from username enumeration vulnerability that we found earlier, right? So we just come here and then we say set username and we call it what? Admin, as you can see here. Then we press what? We press enter. Now, before we continue, it remains, there's one other thing that I have to set. Just one last thing that I have to set, and that is what we call our local host. Our local host. Okay, that was why I actually opened this tab that I have here. So if I want to check my local host, I can just type ifconfig. So when I type ifconfig, okay, so I can just come here, let me see, and click on this, exactly. Then go back and type ifconfig. Then you can see 10.10.113. That's going to be our local host in this case. So I'll just come here and I will say set lhost to be equals to what? 10.10.113. Let me confirm that it's 13. Yeah, 10.10.113, as you can see here. So I'll just press 10.10.113 and I'll press enter. Now the last thing I have to do is what? I have to confirm that everything is being set up properly. So I'll type show options. I'll type that again and I'll press enter. And what do you notice? All those things that are provided have been added here. They have been configured here. I entered this, I changed 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 this, and then I changed this. So all of that has been configured for us to use now. All right. So now before we now do the last thing that we have to do here, as a a rule of thumb, always try to check to see if that thing will be successful. So to try and see if this particular, if I can basically have this particular, server where the WordPress website is being located, I can just type a command known as check. So I'll type check and I'll press enter. And what can you see here? There is a response that came that says the target appears to be vulnerable, i.e., the target appears to be vulnerable. So I might be able to add this server by this particular module with all my settings configured. So now, if you understand that, then the next thing I have to do is what? I have to type exploits or run. I can type exploits or I type run. But most times, if you're using like an exploit module, an exploitation module, just type exploits. So I'll just type exploits and I'll press enter. And as you can see, it's telling me that it is starting up a reverse TCP handler on 10.10.113 port 4444. And as you can see here, I have gotten a shell access. How do you know that I have gotten a shell access? As you can see here, it says Metapita session 1 open. That is to tell you that the attack is successful, i.e., you have been able to like gain an access to the server. You may or may not believe, but if you should type a command known as sysinfo and press enter, then it will tell you the server that you are interacting with. In my own case, this WordPress website is being hosted on a Windows Server 2022, as you can see here. So it has been able to get, it has been able to get some information about the server, like the computer name is Server 2022. The operating system is what? Windows Server 2022, and then you can see the build AMD64 and all of that, and then you can see the Metapita version that I am basically using here, which is what? PHP Windows. So in this case now, we have been able to actually like gain an access to the server where the particular WordPress website is being hosted. So like I've said before, whenever it comes to like WordPress website, the moment you're able to like gain an access to this page, admin page, then you can actually gain an access to the server where the WordPress website is being hosted by using this particular module, which is Unix web app wp_admin shell upload. And as you can see, we're on the server. Now in this case, we can do a lot of things, but obviously I've not been doing a lot of things. Let me see, just one asking question. Okay, nobody. Let me just add this person. Okay, nobody's asking any question, that's fine. Okay, so now in this case, like I said, you can do a lot of things. You can basically, move through the servers and all of that. And to do that, I will show you. I can decide to move out of this particular directory. I can decide to move out of this particular directory. And you can see where I am, right? If I should type ls, then I can see whatever it is that you have in this particular folder, which is wp-content folder. If you want to check their upload, I know maybe they have like files uploaded, maybe sensitive files and all of that. You can just move to the upload folder by typing cd to what? Uploads, right? And then you can type ls to see whatever it is that they have there. But in my own case now, who is that?
Said Wednesday is okay by me, 1 p.m. Sessions.
Moyi, is it Moyi? Right. Yeah, I think it's the one.
I have muted. Please continue.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. So like I said, you can at this point you can decide to like move through the server, check the content, do whatever it is that you want to do. All of that depends on you, right? You are the hacker, and then you know what you're trying to achieve, right? So in this case, well, we can decide to move around. I can decide to move out of this folder if I want to. I can decide to see if I can find any sensitive information here. And then as you can see a configuration file here. This actually contains some sensitive information and all of that. And basically you can just like move around through the server to edit files, you can do whatever it is that you want to do. But in my own case, I will not be doing anything like that. But in this case, what I'm trying to show you is that you can actually do a lot of things here, because at this point in time, you have been able to gain a shell access to the server, which implies that you can do whatever it is that you want to do on the server. So let's see if you can move out, if we can move out, and let's see if we can move into the users folder. Let's see if we can move into the users USERS exactly, and then let's see if we can list out the content of the users folder. So in this case, there's only an administrator folder. So yeah, there is a location of what you can see is that on this particular Windows Server machine, there is an account with the name of what? Administrator. So whatever it is that you can do here, all of that depends on you. You can just explore and do all of that. Okay, yeah. So this will come to the end of the practical session that I'm about to show you. for moving into a web server once you are able to like gain an access to the admin page. All right, so now there's one last thing I want to show you, but then before that I would like to ask if there's any question. All right, so I can see someone raising up his hand. Israel, yeah, let me hear from you. Israel, what's your question?
I have a question, sir.
Yeah, go on. Israel, can you hear me? You can unmute and talk. Israel, I can't hear you. In case you are speaking, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, sir. So my question is that if, like you said now, when it comes to like attacking, like becoming a man in the middle, that kind of attack, right? That wants to like intercept someone's artisanal. Can you like just give us like kind of like a picture of how it works? Because I know this one is because we haven't done our system, like we are doing it from our own end, yeah. So
Exactly.
So like it sounds really easy.
Exactly.
And simple. People. So what about that
Okay.
one? If it is someone that is sensitive,
I didn't get that too, Israel.
like I was saying, like if it is like for example now, someone else is trying to like access that yeah,
Okay,
access the WordPress account.
come again. I didn't get that. Honestly, I don't know.
Not maybe now.
Israel. Oh wait,
Can you hear me, sir?
yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, a call came in. No, sorry about that. Alright, so I was saying that for example now, let's say I was like the victim wanted to like exploit, right? And I was accessing that WordPress page on my own end here. And you, like you said, you can use like Etsy.
Oh, okay. Wait. You're having that's like two different. The question you asked and what you're saying now, they are two different things. Now, what you need to know is that even if this website, this WordPress website is being hosted on the internet, this same thing that I did can be tried against the site, obviously with permission, right? So now the logic is still the same. With permission, let's assume that you're authorized to like test the site and everything. You come here, right? And as usual, let me log out from here. Most likely you might see a page like this, right? This what you're going to be doing is also the same thing. You come to your settings, you go to your network, you come here, you set up your proxy like I did before, you click on OK, and then you try to see. First thing that you try to do is what? You try to see if you can enumerate valid usernames from here. Maybe that will be the first thing that you want to do. Then after enumerating a valid username from here, the next thing is what? You can also decide to do what? To brute force, i.e. to try and see if there's any form of maybe rate limiting, if there's any form of maybe account lockout policy and all of that. But obviously with permission and all of that. So it's not like because this is like hosted locally or something. Even if it is a WordPress website that you have hosted on the internet, this particular simulation is also applicable. I don't know if that answers your question. This is also applicable. You'll be setting up a proxy between your own web browser and the server. That is where you are setting up the proxy on. You are setting up the proxy between your own web browser and the server. Israel, okay, yeah. So if that, so I think that answers your questions, right? Give me another thumbs up if that answers your question, Israel. All right, thank you. Okay. All right. Oh, so I think there's no other question. Okay, yeah. So I think there's no other question. Michael, yeah, unmute and ask your question. Michael, you're raising up your hand. So if you have a question, unmute and ask. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Well, Michael. Okay, so maybe that's a mistake. But if you have a question, you can unmute and ask before I continue with what I'm about to show you. So I guess maybe that was a mistake. Okay. Now let me see. Is there any question here for me? Can you make changes and upload files from here? You can't unmute. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let me look at your question. Can you make changes and upload files from here? Obviously, you can. Yeah. I'm not sure if I want to do something like that, but let me see. Obviously, you can. So let me see what can be done here. So now, this is how you do that. I've seen your question. Michael. So actually, this is how you do that. So now, remember I said I'll be using a tool known as Metasploit, right? And after using that Metasploit, you notice that I have a Metapita session, like this particular session. So now, how do you do that? So let me just do this. Exactly. So now, Metasploit has a command known as upload. Yeah, this particular command here, upload. Can you see that? And it is a command that you use to like upload files or directory into like maybe a server the moment you have a Metapita shell. So you can just say upload and the file that you want to upload to the server, and then it will be uploaded to the server. So I'll just type okay. Let me see what I have here. Let me type ls. Okay, so let me just try to see. Can I move to let me move back to where I'm coming from, which is WAM64 wwwch. Okay, yeah. So let's just go back to where we are coming from, which is okay. I have to go back. So cd to WAM. Okay, no, before that, type ls. So cd to WAMP. IE, I'm trying to move into this folder. I want to move into this directory. As you can see a type here, dir. Dir means that it is a directory, and if you see file, it means that it is a file. So in this case, you can see dir, so it means that this is a directory. So I'll try to move into this directory that you can see here. So I'll say cd to WAMP64. I'll press enter, and as you can see, this has changed from here to this, from what you have here to what you have here. All right, then I can also type ls. Then I can decide to move to www. Then I can type ls. Then I can try to move to okay, I should move to ch. No, let's just stay here. All right. So now, if I want to, for your question now, if I want to like upload a file, you can upload a file, you can download a file. So if I want to like upload a file to, let's say, this www folder, I'll just type upload and then the file name that I want to upload. But in my case, let me just upload passwords. I think password.txt. Passwords.txt. I think that's the name. And press enter. Oh no, that's not it. Okay, let me see. That is not it. So I'll do Control L. So maybe this is all I'll do. Let me exit this. Yeah, and then let me exit this. Okay, yeah, the file is not here. So let's cd to. Let's assume that you want to like upload a file to that particular server, right? So let's create a file. Let's create a file. Let's call it maybe message.txt, and then let's just put a content here, maybe hello, your server has been hacked. As you can see here, just a simple message, right? All right, so I'll save this particular file. I'll save this particular file, and then I can read out the content of the file just to be sure that it is there. Yeah. So I've created a file known as message.txt, and then I've put the content inside. Oh, okay. No message for me. That's fine. And then I'll put the content, the content inside. Now let's go back to our Metasploit MSF console. Okay. So we say you search for wp underscore admin underscore shell underscore upload. Oh no, I should not have cancelled that thing, but it's fine. So we try to use it, and then when we use it, we say show options. As you can see here, oh no, I should not have cancelled this thing, but it's fine. We set the password to be QWERTY at 123. As you can see here, we set the username to be what? Admin. We set the rhost, which is basically what I've shown you before, to be 10.10.122. Then we set the output to be what? 8080. As you can see, we set the target URI to be equals to what? CEH. Then let's try to show options again. Then what else am I supposed to set? Okay, yeah, we are supposed to set this lhost. So we also set lhost to be equals to 10.10.113, as you can see here. So we say what? We say check as usual, target appears to be vulnerable. We say exploit. And then as usual, to exploit it, we gain our metaphysical shell and all of that. Now, if I now want to upload maybe a message or maybe a file, the example I'll be showing here is just like trying to like upload a file, right? So let me just move out of this folder. Let me move out of this folder so I can easily locate it. Let me move out of this folder. Yeah. Then when I type ls, oh no, let me move out of this folder too. And when I type ls, exactly, yeah. So now if I want to upload that file, I'll just say upload. Let me confirm the name again. ls message.txt. So I'll just say upload message.txt and I'll press enter. And what can you see here? It's going to tell you that you have uploaded the file to the target, and you can see completed. The file has been uploaded to the server. So does that answer your question, Mr. Michael? Yeah. Does that answer your question, Mr. Michael? Okay, thank you so much for that. Now I want to know if there's a way to detect unauthorized access and share. Obviously now there are ways to detect all of that. You have your logs, you have your you have your logs to like show all of that, and then you might have some what's it called now? Yeah, your logs can basically show all of that. Yeah. So basically your logs can show all of that. But then you just have to be checking. So it is one thing to, like I said, this is one thing to like have your it's one thing for you to have your to have like login and all of that implemented. It is another thing. It is another thing for you to be monitoring and be checking for all of that. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So any other question? Okay, so I guess there's no other question. Okay. Yeah. So the last thing that I'll be showing you, like I said, so now you have been able to gain an access to the server, right? So let's just cancel this and exit. So now there's one other thing that I want to show you. So if you notice, the first way that we are able to gain an access to this site is we started from enumerating for valid username, right? We entered, use a username of admin, use a wrong password, then just telling us that the password that we entered for the username admin is incorrect, right? Okay, and then when we found out, what we did was what? We pinpoint and we just stayed on that particular user, which is admin, and then we tried to find his password. But in some cases, you might actually want to check if there exists more than one valid user on this particular WordPress application. Yeah, you might want to check for that. So you might want to use Bobsuit for that, but I will not be using Bobsuit for that. So I'll also be using Metasploit for that. So now what I want to show you now is that I want to show you that, how can we discover every possible usernames and maybe password that exist on this particular application? Now, how successful this type of should I say attack will be against this application depends on, obviously it depends on the defensive mechanism of the application, and it also depends on your own word list, i.e. your username word list and your password word list. So in my case, let's try to discover every possible let me exit out of this, every possible account that exists on the application. So I'm going to cd to my desktop. I'll try to cd to my, I think, word list. I'll press ls. Let me just try to remove this address something. Press ls. All right, that's fine. Then I can do Control L. I can press enter and press ls. Yeah, exactly. So now let's try to see if there's any way in which we can discover every valid account on this particular application based on our word list. Remember, based on what we know, username enumeration, username or user account enumeration on this application is enabled. So we could look for account that exists, and then maybe account that does not exist. We can look for all of that, and then there is no form of weight limiting. So we can also brute force on this particular application. So now what we want to do is we want to see if we can find out every possible account that exists on this application by using the same logic, which is what we are going to try and brute force for every possible usernames and every possible password on that particular account. And like I said, to do that we'll be using Metasploit. So as usual, I'll start up MSF console. As you can see here, I'll start up MSF console. Let me just confirm that there's nothing wrong here. Okay, yeah, there's nothing wrong here, so I can move on. Okay, so I'll start up MSF console, and as you can see, I started it up. Then I will try to search for let's say WP login. Okay, not this one. So let's try to search for WordPress. Let's say WordPress. It's going to be a lot. Oh yeah, that's fine. Search for WordPress login. Okay, yeah. So we'll be using what we have here, which is basically what you have here, this particular one that says auxiliary scanner, HTTP, WordPress login enumeration. So this particular module, as we have here, it allows you to brute force WordPress page and basically enumerate user on that particular page. It allows you to do what? It allows you to brute force a WordPress page and basically enumerate user on that particular page or that particular application, which is basically what I'm looking for. So I would say I want to use 0. I'm typing 0 because from the result, when I typed search WordPress login, it shows me some couple of modules, and this module that I want to use has a number, a temporary number of 0 for now. So I'll just say use 0. So I'll type use 0 and I'll press enter. And as you can see, it has basically used this particular module for me here. Then the next thing is what? As usual, I will type show options to discover all those things that I have to set. Well, it might look a bit actually it might want to like look a bit maybe complex, but don't worry, I'll try to like simplify all of this for you. But in our own case, what we want to do is that we want to set some parameters in which I'll be telling you. One, we want to set a, as you can see from here, user file. We want to set a user file to be equals to, so we want to set a user file to be equals to, let me cd to desktop, let me cd to word list and press ls. So we want to set a user file to be equals to our username.txt file that we have here, which is basically a file that I've been using before. So it's like a file that consists a list of maybe possible usernames and all of that. So I want to set a user file to be equals to this particular username.txt. So I will say set user file to be equals to user, okay, capital U. So I want to ensure that this is capital U. User name with s, so that's usernames .txt, as you can see here. So I want to set that. So I'll say set user file to be equals to usernames.txt. I'll press enter. So that has been set for me. I'll do the same thing for the password file. Set pass file, what you have here, pass file. So set pass underscore file to be equals to what? Passwords, which is like the password word list that I have here, the password word list that I have here. So set pass file to be equals to passwords.txt, and then you can press enter also. Then after this, I also need to set some things, such as I need to set my R host, just like I've done before, to be equals to what? 10 10 1 22. I'll do that and I'll press enter, just like I've done before. I also need to set my R ports. Remember, when I broke all these things down for you, they have meaning and they have reasons, and you are, you're expected to like use them if you want to actually like attack that particular target. That was why I broke this thing down here. Okay, then we also want to like set output to be equals to what? 8080. So we do that and we press enter. Then we also need to set a target URI to be equals to what? CEH, what we saw before. Remember, we are trying to like brute force a login page, and we are trying to like find out every possible username and password combination that exists in my own file. So if there's anyone that exists, it will bring it out for me. Then the last thing I have to do here is to do what? Is to type, let me see, can we check? So let's try to type check. And then it's telling you that this module does not support check, which means that you cannot run check against it. And that's fine, that's okay. I'll just type run and I'll press enter. So what you notice is what? It's going to start that particular process for you, that particular brute forcing process. It's going to like start it for you. So as you can see here, it's telling you that it found a valid user known as what? Admin, and that particular user has an ID of what? Of 1. You can see that, right? Okay, that's fine and that's okay. There's no issue. Now, another thing, so what you need to be paying attention to here is anything or any result that has a green plus button. Like this one, it has a green plus button. This one also has a green plus button, which is to tell you that, oh, it has been able to like locate the user, username file that you gave it. Okay, that's fine. Now, this one also has a positive or a green plus button, and it is telling you that your username admin is valid. That's fine. Then you move on to the other one or to the next one that has a green plus button. So it is telling you that there is also another user on that WordPress application that has a username of what? CEH user 1, as you can see here. CEH user 1. Okay, that's fine. It's valid. No problem. Let's move on. Then the next one that has a positive green plus button is telling you that there exists a username with a name of what? CEH user 2. That is why you can see this positive green plus button here. So now at this point, we have been able to discover 3 valid users on that particular WordPress application, and they are what? They are admin, they are CEH user 1, and then CEH user 2. Okay, that's fine. Now, can we attempt to brute force their password since we have gotten their, username? So let's see. So we continue scrolling down until we see the next green plus button. We scroll down, we scroll down, we scroll down, we scroll down, we continue scrolling down, we scroll down. Okay, it's a lot actually. So let's just continue scrolling down. So I'll continue scrolling down. Everything is red. Can you see anything green? Yeah, there's a green button here. So it is telling you that it has been able, as you can see here, this is a positive green plus button. Sorry, I need to stop an alarm. Sorry. Okay, yeah, but then this is a positive green plus button, and then as you can see, it is telling you that you have a password known as alpha belonging to a user known as CEH user 2. It implies that a user with the name CEH user 2 has a password of what? Alpha. Okay, that's fine. Let's continue with the results. So we continue scrolling down. Okay, I think we've seen one. And then we've seen this one before, right? From our WordPress results. It is telling us that what? Admin exists on the application. We know that before. And the password is what? Qwerty at 123. That's fine. No problem. That's okay. So we continue scrolling down. Okay, that's all. But I think I've jumped something. I have actually jumped something. Yeah. I have jumped this. So it's all telling us that for CEH user 1, he or she has the password of what? Green. So as you can see CEH user 1 has a password known as green, and then admin, we've seen this one before, has a password of what? Qwerty at 123. So this is like everything that you have been able to discover. Now, if you refuse to believe, then we can try to see if it is actually true. So we saw that from our results, for CH user 1, he or she has a password of what? Green. So we go there and then we try to log in as that user, CH user 1, and the password is expected to be green. And then we do what? We click on login. We can click on not now, and what do you notice? We have been able to log in as what? CH user 1. As you can see here, CH user 1 is what? Jason Brown or whatever. So one thing that you notice here is that in as much as you have a very big word list, and then it has all the required info or the required information. Whenever it comes to you attacking a WordPress website, you can just do what? Try to brute force. If there's no form of rate limiting, there's username or user account enumeration, you can just combine the two together and just try to brute force it, which is basically what I've been doing here, or what I've done here. So now we have been able to discover other accounts that we were not able to discover before. We have been able to discover them by basically doing what? Exploiting that username enumeration, and then combining that with the what? We are combining that with the lack of rate limiting, and basically we brute force, and then we have been able to locate 3 valid accounts. So let me see if anybody has any question for me, or does anybody have any question? Question. Muhammad Badmos, yeah, you can unmute and ask. Another person.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Ahmad.
Stephen.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Okay. My first question is what in a live environment, right?
Okay.
We don't know the IP address of the website.
Yeah, you
We
can.
only know the
Okay.
domain.
Okay.
So
Okay.
how
Okay.
do we block that?
Well, you
And
can.
the second question
Okay.
is that for the other users, can we also get access to the web server?
No.
Other users.
No, you cannot. You cannot. Okay, so I'll answer your two questions. So first one, you see for a live target, like you don't have the IP address. One is you can actually get the IP address. Once you have a website, you can get the IP address. But then, even if you do not have the IP address and then you don't know the IP address to like use, you can just type, if you type show options here, so you can just try to set the out host to the domain that you know. For example, if it is example.com, maybe that is the site name. You can just say set out host to the domain that you know for that particular target, right? So you can just say set out host to be equal to that particular thing, and then you press enter. That will still work. As you can see here, it is still going to work. But in my own case, I will unset. Let me just unset the out host. But then you can just set the out host, and that will work. So that's it for your first question. Now for your second question about for CH user one, can you also like try to like use that particular one to gain an access to the web server? The answer to that is no. And I think I mentioned that before, that only for WordPress website, the moment you're able to like gain an access to the admin page, then you can gain an access to the web server where the WordPress website is being hosted. So it has to be the admin page that you're able to like get an access to first. So I think that should answer your question, Badmos. So if you are satisfied with the answer, you can just give me a thumbs up or something. So I'll be sure that you understand what I've said. All right, thank you. Now for I'm having another person raising up his hand, Ahmad Sultan. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I got the pronunciation right. You can unmute and talk. Ask your question.
Okay, sir. It's Sultan, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay.
So you were talking earlier that they are someone asked the question that how are they going to know, like for defensive, like
Okay.
that they are logged,
Okay, yes.
that the log, yeah, I would say, but aren't the log like a random IP trying to gain access to an account? Isn't that a normal thing? How are they going to know that it's an unauthorized app?
Okay, yeah, I'll answer that question. I'm coming out. Sorry, I'm coming out. Let me answer Ahmad's question. Okay, so maybe you are okay. So let's assume that you are viewing a log file, right? Maybe an Apache log or an Nginx log or whatever it is. You are viewing a log, like a log file for your application, and then you can see, for example, now this brute forcing attack that I did. Let me show you that this brute forcing attack that I did here sent a whole lot of requests within how many minutes? Less than 5 minutes. All these requests were sent within a small amount of time. Okay, you are revisiting, you are reviewing a log, and then you can see that an IP address, just one IP address, let's say the IP address is 10.10.113. An IP address like this IP address is sending let's say about okay, I can't use that thing. It's sending about 5,000 requests within, let's say, five minutes. So now you are reviewing a log, right? You can see a particular IP address sending a whole lot of requests, or a particular IP address trying to log into one account and sending a whole lot of combination. For example, now as you can see here now, the same way that I am sending this thing here, such that it is sending as you can see here, it is sending a username of admin. Okay, let me just pick one. Let me pick one here. It's sending a username of admin and then maybe a wrong password. Yeah, let me just put this one. Can you see? It is trying CH user one green, CH user one, another password. CH user one, another password. So it is sending a whole lot of this for a particular account. So you that are reviewing the log, you know that there is something malicious about this particular thing. Does that make sense? So you know, based on the request that you are receiving, you know that, oh, there is something wrong about this particular traffic. For example, if the owner of the account is trying to log in, then obviously the owner of the account will know his or her username and his or her password. So most times we just enter it and he will log in. As simple as that. So Mr. Ahmad, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, Nat, you were raising up your hand before. I have to hand over to, because that's the last practical I'm going to show you today. Mr. Nat, do you have a question for me?
Good evening, Mr. Rafi.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah.
So my question just goes back to when you were trying to enforce the logins and the passwords.
Okay.
I saw that you used on an already created password and a login TXT file that you
Obviously.
already.
Yes.
So my question is, what if you don't have an already created TXT and password files?
Okay.
How do you go ahead and the process in getting the user data?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think I said, okay, let me just say it again. Now, this is it. In real life, you may or may not have an already made word list. Like I was saying yesterday, you can try rockq.txt, which is a word list created for password. It was gotten from a cyber breach, a cyber attack or a breach in 2009, right? From a gaming platform. So you might want to use maybe a password list like rockq.txt. That will be valid. So you can use that here. Instead of me using the one that I have that is already created, I can just use rockq.txt, which is widely available. It is available on the internet, on GitHub. Now, if you are using an attacking machine like Kali Linux instead of Parrot, as you can see, I am using Parrot. If you are using an attacking machine like Kali Linux, it has some of these things. So it has like your rockq.txt, which is like a password word list that you can use for your brute forcing. And then for your username file, you can basically create that by yourself. And if you don't want to create it by yourself, if you don't want to create it by yourself, you also have it on Kali Linux pre-installed. Does that make sense? But even though when it comes to, if you're asking me one-on-one, I'll tell you that if you're working on a target, that it is best you create that word list, your username word list by yourself, because you want to ensure that whatever list it is that you're using, it is specific to your target. But if you don't want to create the list by yourself, you can obviously use some publicly available lists like rockq.txt and others. They are available pre-installed on Kali Linux. Did that answer your question, Mr. Nat?
Yeah, it does.
All right. So thank you so much for today, guys. That will be the end of the demo and the end of our class for today. So I'll be handing over to Mr. Samuel.
Whatever it gives to security, it was it gives back to you. Every day is for the thief, or one day is for the owner. That talks about that the thief is 99 times smarter than the owner. That way means one must need to think like one.